Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Newcastle City Council Special Study Session. The study session is a session to study the preliminary 2025 budget. Time is 6 o'clock. It's October 1st. Please show that 6 council members are present. Councilmember Burford has asked to be excused, and our directors are also present. So at this point, I will turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. We'll just jump right in. So tonight, what we wanted to get through essentially was salaries and benefits. Briefly just hitting the interfund service charges just because it's something that was just implemented in the current year, and so we just want to make sure that that is in front of everybody and that if you have questions, we can address those. Really, the meat of it will be the general fund, and then if we get that far, we can hit the street fund and the swim fund as well. So in the preliminary budget, the 2025 preliminary budget reduces our total FTEs from 23.6 to 23. It includes a 2% COLA for non-represented employees, along with moving to the 10-step system for our compensation system. That change was made earlier in the year with changes to the personnel manual. Per the CBA, the Public Works Union employees are slated for a 3.42% COLA. What that is the 90% of the CPIU, which includes a 1% floor and a 4% ceiling. The CPI was 3.8, so 90% of that is 3.42. And then per AWC, the increase to health costs is 7%. And so those are all assumed in the numbers in the budget. As far as the position adjustments, same as we've talked about previously, moving our events and recreation coordinator from a 0.6 FTE to 0.8, essentially from 24 hours to 32. And really what that turns into is the average that she'll work over the course of a year. When we get into the event season, she'll work more, and then when we're in the off season, she'll work less. The off support specialist position is reduced to part-time, and as we've said before, that will be specifically slated to support public works. And then we removed the senior planner position in community development and added a part-time administrative assistant. And so the total salary and benefits impact then for total salary change from 2024 to 2025 is an increase of $43,400 in the budget in total. The general fund portion is reduced by $18,000. And then the total benefits change is a reduction of a little over $88,000. The general fund portion is about $71,000 reduction. And so total salary and benefits change in the general fund is a little over $89,000, and the total budget change for salary and benefits is almost $45,000 in reduction. Questions, comments about salaries and benefits?
Which is, sorry. I felt I was in the finance committee meeting. How much is total for COLA and merit increase included in the budget?
Yeah, that's what the total is for merit plus COLA.
It's
is
2%?
what those totals are. So for the total budget, for the total salary increase for the total budget, merit and COLA is $43,400.
No, what percentage does it convert into?
Oh, I don't know. We could do that real fast.
Like, you know how we have like 3%, 4%, 7% total?
Oh, so the step system, moving to the 10-step step system puts 3% between steps on the merit steps, and then a 2% COLA.
So total of 5%?
Total of 5%.
Okay.
I have one question on, any other questions? The 2% standalone by itself, what is the dollar amount behind that 2%?
I don't know.
Okay.
We can get that out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we do know for the 2%, just for the general fund, it's about $33,000. I don't know what it is for the total budget. Other questions? Okay, we'll move on. So interfund service charges, again, this is just based on a formula per the guidance from the state auditor's office as far as what's allowed. Essentially, we come up with a total operating cost, and then the public works funds essentially versus the general fund, we come up with how they're split out. And so the total amount for the general fund is 81%, the total amount for the public works share is 19%. And so essentially what we pull out of those public works funds that are eligible to share those costs with, then it's dependent on the budget of those funds. And so for street fund and for the swim fund, it's based on the entire fund. And then we pull for the capital funds. It can't be for the entire fund just because, you know, you don't share $2 million worth of admin costs for a big project. And so it's just based on a percentage. And so for the capital funds, it's just 15%. And so this just tries to lay out how we come up with those numbers as far as the share for interfund service charges. And then because capital projects, those will ebb and flow year to year. Sometimes we have heavy design years and the cost for capital projects are much lower, and other years we are heavy on the construction of those projects and capital costs will be really high. And so the same thing's gonna happen with interfund service charges. When we have a high capital projects year, interfund service charges are gonna be much higher. When we have a low capital projects year, that's gonna come down. And so interfund service charges is gonna do this as well. Questions on that?
Are we doing any transfers from general fund into any other fund in the budget?
Yeah, we have a transfer from general fund into the street fund.
How much?
553,000, I think.
Okay. Okay.
And that'll be on the upcoming slide. We can get into that. Okay. So just like we do most years, just want to provide a little detail on property tax, sales tax, and development revenue, just because those are our largest general fund revenues. So again, just walking through property tax and just the basics of it for what we're allowed as far as a revenue increase for property tax. It's a 1% increase in our revenue. And so that doesn't necessarily mean it's a 1% increase in property taxes. It means that our revenue can only go up by 1% plus the value of new construction. And so so starting in late September, we start getting estimates from King County on our property tax. And so right now, the 1% allowed revenue would be the $62,872. That's the value of the 1% increase in revenue that we're allowed. And so that $62,872 gets distributed throughout the community based on whatever the King County assessor valued homes at. So like we've gone through over the last couple of years, and you'll see on a future slide where we had this heavy downward trend on the levy. We went from 153 to 140 to 134 down to 104, and then the current year we came back up to 120. The reason for that is simply because of how properties were assessed, so we had these steep increase in values, and that drives the tax levy down, and then there was an adjustment, and it came back up. And then in 2025, it's expected to go back down. Right now, and again, why we kind of have iterations of this is because King County gets us estimates as they have information come in. Right now, they essentially have 1 or 2 homes as being available for new construction, which is not a lot of money. And so right now, the value that they gave us for new construction was $2,600. So that's based on like $2.1 million in assessed value. That's a home, maybe two, in Newcastle. And so we fully expect that will go up. There's certainly been more than 1 or 2 homes built over the last year. So the estimate right now, as far as the levy rate with the 1% increase, would be $1.09 per $1,000 assessed value, as in comparison to the current year levy rate is $1.20. And then below, we went through this last year. We basically just took an average home and provided the basic math for what the 1% does. Just trying to drive home the point of the total levy rate that property owners in Newcastle experience is about $9.45 per thousand, and that'll vary depending on which taxing district you're in. Newcastle has 6 different taxing districts. And so based on that number, that's what Newcastle gets is that $1.20 of that $9.45. And so that's about 12.7% of your total tax that you pay as property owners goes to the city of Newcastle. And then the simple property tax math is just that. It's just a basic, but again, the caveat is down there at the bottom. The actual will depend on how the King County assessor has made things go up or down. And so we had a really high year for single family properties and a really low year for multifamily properties. And then the next year they flopped. And so last year, even with the 1% increase, there was a decrease in your taxes just because of that difference in how the properties were assessed. Any questions on that so far?
Thank you. Can you give examples of, you said it says 6 taxing districts. Can you just give examples of what that means?
Yeah, so the 945 is just, we picked an average house, and that's, we can go on King County Parcel Viewer and see where they're at. So some homes are in the Renton School District, some homes are in the Issaquah School District. Their levies are different. Some homes are part of Sound Transit, and some aren't. And so we have 6 different taxing districts that vary what taxing districts you're a part of that make up your total bill. Is that what you're after? Okay. You want to go to the next? So this just provides some history from 2021 to an estimated 2025. Again, just taking that average home, how that average home has assessed over the years, what the city's levy rate has been, the city's total tax, whether we took the 1% or banked it. So you see in 2021, we took the 1%. 2022, we banked it. We took the 1% plus the bank, so 2% in 2023, 1% last year, and then the preliminary budget assumes the 1% for 2025, and then we're just showing the effect of those on that home as far as what they owed the city of Newcastle. Down at the bottom, the total dollar increase from those levies. Any questions on that?
If council members, if there's questions, just jump right in. Okay.
The next one, sales tax. And so again, just trying to give you some history, just so you kind of see where we've been. We're getting to a point to where we have had online sales for a little while and can see the history of that, which is helpful. Along with local sales to get you a total retail number plus the construction sales tax. So that's what we're trying to show there is how that breaks out to the total retail sales tax that we get for the city of Newcastle. Coming in strong this year, through August. And we anticipate the way that our years go is that generally August, September, October, November are higher. December will come down a little bit. And so we're tracking really well through August, anticipating our highest months coming up. And so we're happy with how strong sales tax is currently. And you'll see that in the revenue projections as far as what we think it'll do in 2025. Questions on sales tax? And this is just the current year outlook where you can see we're trending high as far as projected. Just today, as of October 1st, we got September, and September was strong. And so we're really comfortable with where we're projected to go. For development revenue, this just provides a breakdown of development revenue between permits, plan check fees, and then other fees. Just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of just kind of the nuances of development revenue, especially right now where we've kind of gone through a time where we've been projecting these really high revenues since COVID because we have these developments coming in, but they've kind of been delayed and come in more over a couple of years rather than all in 1 year. And so we're trying to take that into account as we project out years where things haven't, we're going to get revenues in 1 year where we may spend the money on those reviews and permitting in the following year. And so we'll continue to try to be, keep our projections a bit conservative so that we don't have, so in 2022 and in the 2023 budgets, we had these super high expectations of what development revenue was going to do, and we were way, way short of those. And so we want to be not be so aggressive about those projections as we move forward. So that's all that is. That it's not one-to-one timing. It's not like we get a revenue and then we spend it as far as development fees. That's just not how it plays out. And then again, giving you the historical on the development revenue. A little higher in 2019, dipped during COVID, and we've been coming back up since then. The biggest challenge with as we move forward is just that there's much less large developments, even that are potential to have. We have a lot of, small short plats that will continue to come in as people that have a little bit of property subdivide, but we simply don't have the available land for the large developments that we've had in recent years.
Scott,
Yep.
so then for 2025, is the building permit figure pretty much the only one that we expect to be dramatically lower? And everything else should hold steady?
So generally it's permitting in general, just because with developments like we have, they all come in together. There's a building permit, there's a plumbing permit, there's a mechanical permit. There's activity that comes along with those as far as permitting in general. And so building permits will be the biggest one that drops. But all of those have come down somewhat.
Okay, thanks.
And then this last slide on development revenue is just showing you current year budget actuals through August and then our projected. Really the thing that's making everything really strong right now is plan review fees have been high. A lot of that was towards the beginning of the year. We had a really strong end of 2023 and a really strong beginning of 2024. And then we've had our engineering review permits come in much stronger than we anticipated for the year. Any other questions on development revenue? All right. So general fund revenue in general. This is just how our categories break down to our total number. Something that we'll continue to take a look at is we've always budgeted, at the very bottom, we've always budgeted that other financing sources. And really, that's just the ebb and flow of receiving development fees and then paying out for review and the costs that go into permitting. 750,000 is pretty high. And all we're trying to do there is there's other financing sources on the revenue side, and then there's another financing sources on the expenditure side, and they match. It just, at this point, really that number is probably closer to $350,000, $400,000. And so we just want, it's a big overstatement on both sides, and so we're gonna look at how we can tighten that up without understating things. All right, so if you have your binders and want to look at all the detail, please feel free. So like we did last year, what we've tried to do as far as the presentation slides is we've pulled out what the major changes are to walk through. But on each of the slides, I've put the pages that these come from out of the preliminary budget so that you can, if you want to follow through that detail, you can. And then at any time, if there's questions or whatever, please stop me. So the major changes as far as taxes go, retail sales tax, our projection is up by about 70,000. Really, I think that was more just a matter of when we got into the 2024 budget and looking at our projections through August. We hadn't looked at the detail of how our late months go and how they're much higher, and we see that that's coming in strong now, where 2023 actuals were high, but through August they didn't look that way. So that's really just trying to be a little more nuanced in how we're looking at our projections and being trying to get closer. And so the same effect happens with the criminal justice sales tax. That'll be strong, just like our retail sales tax is. And so that's up by $20,000 as far as revenue. And then the anticipated addition of an admissions tax, looking at $200,000, looking to implement as of January 1, 2025. And then here's all that permitting revenue and plan check fees and all of those things is this next tranche of revenues that we've brought down some. So like you said, Councilmember Tallman, building permits are the biggest one of those, but we've also brought the others down, trying to make sure that we're not overstating what we think is going to come in. I think the biggest ones are building permits, but also another big piece of that is plan check fees. We've been a little more conservative about plan check fees just because those tend to come in. They won't follow so closely to building permit revenue. Investment interest for the general fund, we brought that up by about $25,000. Again, there's a change as far as how we're budgeting for investment interest, where before there was just a percentage dedicated to each fund, but now how we're allocating investment interest to each fund is based on its share of ending fund balance. And so in doing so, we're also having to adjust what we're budgeting for each fund for investment interest. And so we've been too low in the general fund, and so even with interest rates coming down, we're bringing that up. You'll see in other funds that we probably, it's been too aggressive just because its share of ending fund balance hasn't carried through with wherever it might have been when they put those percentages in place previously. But now we're allocating that investment interest month to month based on ending fund balance. And so the general fund is really strong right now in ending fund balance, and so that'll be strong even with interest rates coming down. But you'll see in other funds where we're going to bring that number down from where it's been because now we're allocating based on ending fund balance. Any questions about that? Again, interfund service charges. So those are down by about $180,000, just like we were talking about a few minutes ago. that's going to ebb and flow, really based on our capital projects in Parks Capital and Transportation Capital, and how those fall in line with where the general fund's at. Every time we make any kind of change, so on the, you'll notice that what we have in the revenue line item for interfund service charges, we've just kind of made it flat. We've done that on purpose just because every time we make any kind of adjustment in any of the funds that are affected by interfund service charges, the amount changes a little bit. And so rather than deal with constantly changing what we expect to see from interfund service charges in the revenue side, we've just made it flat. Even though on the expenditure side, we're trying to be more accurate. That's just so that we don't have to continue to pull that up and down with every iteration that we put in front of you. Miscellaneous revenue is the next one. So this is part of a change in just how we're accounting for revenue. So this is primarily our credit card fees on the revenue side. And this increase will specifically match an increase that you'll see in the finance fund for miscellaneous revenue, which is where we're paying for those credit card fees. This is where we're receiving the revenue for those credit card fees. And so those will stay together. And then the last one is just the transfer in from cumulative reserve which is ARPA funds, paying for the increase in the contract cost for police and fire, the 12th officer, and the flock cameras. Questions on general fund revenue? Okay, expenditures. Here's your categories. So that, again, other financing uses, that $750,000, that's what we'd like to, we haven't made a change at this point in the preliminary budget, but it's just something that we're trying to figure out how we can make that more accurate. Just because it tends to be, when we put, the snapshot in front of the finance committee and put it in front of the council, or when we're doing our quarterly financial reports, it makes for, our revenues seem short because that number is lower than $750,000. It seems like our expenditures are really low because we're not spending that $750,000. So it overstates things on both sides. And so we'd like to narrow that out a bit. And then as Deputy Mayor Locotio was asking about that transfer, that's completely street fund, transfer out to the street fund.
The other financing uses?
So that's just as we have development fees come in, and as we pay for development fees, they go into kind of a pass-through line. And it's just never $750,000. Usually it's about half. And so we want to tighten that up. All right. So again, on the expenditures, as we go through each of the departments, in the general fund, I have the page number there if it's easier, or if you like looking through the book more than looking at a slide. So for the City Council fund, overall, it's down a little over $21,000. And the biggest pieces of that are bringing down meeting meals. Again, that's reduced due to changing town hall venues primarily, where that had been much higher when we were at the golf club. And then professional services is down, and that's taking away using a consultant for a retreat. For the city manager fund, it's down almost $60,000 overall. The main pieces of that are advertising. We had a really high year when there was a lot of turnover, but that's settled down quite a bit, and so pulling that number down. This year our liability insurance actually came down quite a bit, just based on the city's loss history. It had been higher. Essentially, what WCIA does is they have a 5-year look back as far as loss history, and as bad losses fall off of that 5 years, our loss history improves, and then that number improves for us. And so that happened this year where we had a big loss now 6 years ago, and so that number came down for us. And then a big one that came down is professional services for our city attorney. Again, it's just based on how much we're using it and how we're trending. We had a couple of big years where we had some major legal issues, and we're beyond those, and we're not using that much budget anymore. What we've left in there, the $125 that we've put in that line item, should be plenty. We're not worried about that being too aggressive as far as the reduction there.
Scott, question?
Yep.
Regarding legal services, so you have the city attorney services, but a couple pages previous, under public safety, there's legal services, and that's a big jump this year. What is that about?
So that primarily, so we have, most of that is indigent defense services. The main jump there for now is we had a request from our public defender, and so he asked for a big increase in his contract based on just the things that we know are going on with what the State Bar Association is recommending to the Supreme Court. We're shopping that currently, and so it's possible that that can come back down. But right now, we put that in there as a safe number so that we know that we're ready for it if we have to do that. So we're in the process of shopping that contract.
Okay, so this is the number which would potentially go up if the Supreme Court rules against cities, essentially.
Right. So that's what it has to do with. What we're going to see from everybody is that everybody's public defender, regardless of what the Supreme Court does, is going to say, hey, cases are taking longer, cases are costing more, we need this increase, and we got it. He's asked us, and so
Okay.
we told him we'll consider it, but we also let him know we're going to see what else we can find. And so that decision will come back to the Finance Committee once we get quotes and all of those things. But that's the main increase there right now, is we've increased that number to what was asked for until we know that it's going to be different or we're going to go with a different provider. We'll leave it there. All right. So city clerk fund, down about 112,500. The main piece there is moving the office support specialist out of that fund. So that's moved out of being under the city clerk, and we anticipated that it'll support public works. That's been moved over to parks maintenance, the street fund, and swim. And then another big piece of that is just that we only do the community survey every other year, and 2025 won't be a year that we do it, and so we bring that line item down. For city activities, a couple of things here to be aware of. Primarily just that the big decrease is we had budgeted in the current year for a communications contract. We haven't done that. We have taken care of that in-house, and so that's the changing the events and rec coordinator from a 0.6 to a 0.8 FTE. And so the increase on the personnel side of that is much less than the decrease on getting rid of that budget for a communications contract. The other main part of these is that as we've gone through, we've always had the concerts combined with other programs and other in-city activities. And just to be more accurate about what we're doing with events, we've combined 4th of July and concerts together rather than having them separated out. And so that's the main changes you're seeing there, is the increase for professional services is combining two line items together. The decrease in for 4th of July and concerts, that plus 17,400. And then you have a decrease in the professional services for programs and other, as well as down at the bottom, the printing. And that's just that combining of 4th of July and concerts. And then the other item there is getting rid of the police overtime line item. That's just redundant with the police contract line. Questions on those? All right, Finance Department. With Finance Department, the total change is an increase of about $4,500. And the main changes there are the state auditor. So for the current year, our audit budget was really high because the state auditor's office wasn't able to get to all of the audits in 2023. And so for the current year, we were budgeting basically 1.5 audits. And so this decrease is basically just bringing us back to normal for our audit. The increase in miscellaneous, again, this goes back to the revenue side. The $75,000 as far as the budget number matching the miscellaneous revenue on the revenue side for credit card fees. And then just bringing down professional development to a more appropriate place. For IT, down at $36,000 overall. The biggest piece of that is repairs and maintenance. So this is where we budget for our software contracts and the programs that we use. So big decreases here are due to our new financial software is less than what we were paying for previously. And then also just adjustments to other programs or getting rid of them. Primarily, we got rid of Next Request. It was a public records request program. It was just more robust than is needed for us. If we were doing, 300 and 400 requests every year, maybe that would be needed, but that's just not the case for us. The other reduction is King County IT services, and really that's just based on what we're being charged now. Also, due to just accounting for expenses differently. And so all that is coming in is what we're being charged. For building, the total increase for the budget overall is about $7,200. On the professional services side, we brought that down about $10,000 from the current year. Again, looking at how that compares with our plan check fees and our other planning and development services, and how much we need to use that review. The professional services software line is just a line that we've been zero for several years, and so we're just taking it out. As far as our actuals, that we've budgeted this $3,600, it's been in the budget and we never use it. For miscellaneous, this is for our permitting software, and we simply were way too low. I think our total for 2023 was 28,000 or in that realm. Will be higher this year, and then for 2025 needing to be higher. That was a line item that needed to be looked at closer last year, and it wasn't. And then IRF fees. You'll see this in several places throughout the budget. Wherever we charge IRF fees are down just based on our updated IRF program and what that's requiring from each fund.
Question. On the IT repairs and maintenance, is that a retainer or as needed?
Most things are an annual contract. And then the biggest chunk of that is for Connected Northwest, our IT provider.
Okay, so that's an ongoing contract.
Ongoing.
Okay, so we don't expect that number to drop in '25?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Yeah, the main change over the last 2 years has simply been just software adjustments. Really this year it's moving to Springbrook Express for our financial software and removing Next Request.
Got it, thanks.
Planning fund, again, just pointing out salaries and benefits here simply because it's part of staffing changes. We removed the senior planner. and are adding a part-time administrative assistant. And so the salary and benefits change is significant. The fund in whole is down about $150,000. The change in low-income housing, we had this conversation earlier in the year where we decided to just match what our affordable housing sales tax is. That's about $13,000. So you see the $13,000 on the revenue side. This matches that $13,000. For professional services and planning, again, we've been higher the last 2 years as we've gone through comp plan. That should start to come down. We still have a fair amount in there just because we'll continue to, we'll have implementing ordinances. We still have comp plan related work to get done. And so still not wanting to bring that down too crazy to make sure we have enough for the work that still has to be done. And then again, you see the IRF fees. For public safety, I think, Mayor, this is where you're asking. The biggest chunk of that is indigent defense. It's up $24,000. And again, based on the request we received, so we know that if we stick with our current provider, we know what that number will be, and maybe we're able to get a quote that's lower and go with a new provider. The drug enforcement line, so this was specifically a $25,000 grant we received, I think in 2022, that has to be used on approved drug enforcement related expenses. And so the main thing we've used it for this year was we were allowed to use it to help pay for part of the flock cameras. Right now, the assumption is that we'll spend it all in the current year and then that number will be zero. If we don't, we can carry that money forward and then you'll see that in the first budget adjustment in 2025 if we don't spend it in the current year. Repairs and maintenance. Again, this is, we had that line item down. We kept it down just because we were using part of that drug enforcement money to pay for flock cameras. But moving forward, we'll pay for flock cameras fully out of that repairs and maintenance line item. So this takes that into account. The police contract, this is where there was a little bit of nuance where we didn't get our December invoice for 2023 in time and had to pay it in 2024. And so the increase looks small or a decrease, but that's only because we paid for part of 2023 in the current year. And so that's why I put the actuals up at the top. It's a small, it's a $136,000 increase from amended budget to current to preliminary budget. But the actual increase, if you take away that payment, is over $400,000 for the public safety fund in general. And specifically for the police contract, it looks like it's a decrease in the police contract as far as what the budget is. But if you take that December payment out of 2024, the actual increase is $260,000. Any questions about that? With the reserve program, we moved that up about $2,500, anticipating going after our own Explorer program. So this was initially in the budget in the current year for our reserve program. We're just moving the budget up a little bit to establish our own Explorer program. And then the fire contract is a $144,000 increase. It was 4.98% to that new number, a little over $3 million. Questions on public safety at all?
Real quick, are all 6 flock cameras operational now, or is there still one outstanding?
There's still one outstanding. So my understanding, and I don't know if Chief has any updated information, I think they've gone to install it a couple of times and have determined that where they went to install it wasn't going to get enough sun, and so that's been the issue.
Okay.
For engineering in the general fund, fairly sizable decrease in professional services, and really this was, Public Works Department really just digging into making sure we take out one-time costs and the things that have been in that line that increased it in previous years that aren't ongoing. And then again, you see the reduction in our fees.
Question?
Yep.
So I did notice the sharpened pencil. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I wrote a note to myself here. We have a recycling event. Is there some possible way, and this is just a, you don't have to answer now, but can we combine with another city or area to reduce that cost? Just thinking out loud. I mean, I don't know. Just don't have to answer. I'm just throwing that out there as a possible cost savings. And then a couple pages earlier, there's a line item that says professional services, emergency management. What do we get for that? What is, because I thought we had an emergency management plan. Is that some sort of contract that we have, a permanent contract?
It's a placeholder. We've not utilized it in the last few years because just don't have the workload to manage that. Coming up in 2025, the region King County has a new hazard mitigation plan, and we annex onto that so we can be eligible for grants. So there likely could be consultant resources there to help do that. But the last 2 years, I don't think we've spent anything or very few.
Thank you.
And as far as the recycling event, so that's 100% grant funded.
Oh, thank you. All right.
And we already do partner with Mercer Island. So the program is split between us and Mercer Island.
Okay, thank you.
So, just quick one. So the one that he asked about the professional services, do we need to keep that then for emergency services if we've never used it?
So we do use it periodically, and like Director Bruns was saying, we anticipate we will use it in 2025. I'll go next. So with parks maintenance in the general fund, again, just pointing out salary and benefits where it's impacted by the position adjustments. Again, where you see a heavy reduction, taking that position out of the city clerk fund. Part of it is moved to the park maintenance fund, and then the rest is just based on the salary and benefits impacts we discussed earlier. The repair and maintenance here is primarily due to an intentional kind of operational adjustment to try to have more parts and pieces on hand rather than going to the store all the time and having to run back and get things, and trying to make sure that we get a little bit of a stockpile so that we have more of those things on hand and can be more operationally efficient. And then the repairs and maintenance, primarily up due to hazard tree removal is continuing to be more than it's been previously. Then again, you see the IRF fees reduction. That is the general fund. Questions, comments, 1% property tax, 2% COLA, anything?
Well, my question was, to come back with a number for that, for the COLA. What is that? So when you come back to the next.
So I'll get you a number for the budget in whole, as far as just the COLA. General fund impact would be about $33,000.
So I'm looking at the clock here, and of course, we have a few more minutes. What's your feel for how much more you want to do or continue to do here?
Why don't we see how far we can get in the next 6 minutes and go from there?
Go
So
for
we
it.
have street fund and swim fund. Those are generally a little, they can be quick unless there's lots of questions, but let's see how far we can get. So for the street fund, put more of it kind of together on here just because it's, the general fund tends to be an elephant. The street fund changes are much more normal. The waste management fee, so down mid-page, the waste management fee is up based on our contract. They basically move it up based on the CPI. Again, this is one of those places where with investment interest being based on ending fund balance, we're moving that down slightly. We generally haven't budgeted insurance recoveries, but they've been consistent enough over the last several years that we threw it in there. We think this is still a fairly conservative number, but that's been, you can see in the actuals from previous years that that's pretty consistent. And then the transfer in is $12,000 less than last year. The difference is that it's all coming from the general fund. Last year, we had part of it coming from cumulative reserve and part of it coming from the general fund. Questions? All right. Changes on the expenditure side, again, just pointing out salary and benefits where they're affected by the position changes. Again, part of this is where the office support specialist has been moved to support public works. Increase the maintenance and repair supplies, really just based on what we've been spending and anticipated increased supply costs. The increase for our roadway maintenance services with King County, that's where we were really high in 2023. And, you know, it tends to be up and down, but it was really high in 2023. And so really just trying to account for those increases in that cost. We've really kept the budget for it has been fairly constant where the actual costs have not been. And so we are accounting for that historical trend. For repair and maintenance, bringing that down. Again, this is a line item that is up and down depending on how the year goes and trying to be accurate with that. And then you see the reduced amount of interfund service charges. Again, when the whole is lower, it's going to be lower for every fund. And then you see the IRF fees reduction as you've seen before. Any questions on street fund?
City Manager Pingle, I would advocate, I think we have a longer meeting coming up, and I don't think we're going to get through everything anyway. I would personally like to use the restroom and stretch my legs before we subject for probably
We can do that.
a couple hours.
We can hit swim next time. And
Are folks okay with that?
No, I think you have to sit there, sorry. Okay, seeing that, it's a good suggestion. We'll stop here on the budget. Thank you, City Manager, for all the detail, and we'll continue at 7 o'clock with our regular meeting. Thank you.
Hi. How are you? Good. Hard to see.
oh yeah, we haven't had a meeting for a month.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Newcastle City Council regular meeting for October 1st. The time is 7 o'clock. I am Mayor Clark. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and is also being broadcast simultaneously on our YouTube channel, and you can see it later if you'd like. So at this point, please rise and join me in the flag salute. City Clerk, please call our roll.
Councilmember Burford is excused. Councilmember Sherlock? Here. Councilmember Griffin?
Here.
Councilmember Tallman?
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lakotia? Here. And Mayor Clark.
Here.
Thank you, Mayor.
Could I get a motion from a council member to excuse Councilmember Burford?
I move to excuse Councilmember Burford.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? Okay, please note, City Clerk Councilmember Burford has been officially excused. Our council just concluded at 6 o'clock from 6 to 7 a preliminary budget discussion. We talked about the 2025 budget and our general fund, and no decisions were made. We just will continue that at a future study session. Tonight's agenda is listed. Do I have any desired alterations or changes to tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, show the agenda approved as written. We now move on to public comment. Excuse me, I'm sorry, City Attorney, please come on and join us. You have something to say, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick statement, real quick. Once again, the city is in the election season, and I've been asked to provide comments regarding state law as it relates to the use of public facilities in election campaigns. In short, state law, RCW 42.17a.555, prohibits the use of public facilities to assist a campaign for election for any person to office or to support or oppose a ballot proposition. The Public Disclosure Commission is the state agency with jurisdiction to enforce this statute. The Public Disclosure Commission interprets this statute very broadly to include a prohibition on using the public comment period during an agency's public meetings for these purposes. This applies to council member comments during a public meeting as well. To avoid any potential for violations of this statute, please refrain from making comments that support or oppose a candidate for office or a ballot measure. Please have your comments address issues relating to city business or city functions, not campaign or election issues. This includes references to election or campaign materials such as letters, flyers, or similar communications. The city thanks you for keeping your remarks focused on city issues.
Thank you, City Attorney. Next up is public comment. Please note tonight, ladies and gentlemen, that there are 3 sign-up sheets on the table. There is an initial public comment, which we will have now. There's going to be a public hearing on the budget, which is a separate sign-up sheet, and then a second public comment at the end of the meeting. So for public comment, I have a sign-up sheet here. I'll call your name. Please come to the podium. You have 3 minutes to say what you'd like to say. When your 3 minutes are up, there'll be a little beeper, and we ask you to conclude your remarks at that time. So first up tonight on the list I have here, David Hine. David, come on up.
Good evening. My name is David Hine, and I represent the Golf Club at Newcastle. Thank you for the opportunity to come here again to speak on the admissions tax that you're going to be discussing and deciding on later this evening. Over the past month, I have met with the city and spoken with city council members to try and gain more understanding on the city's need and desire to implement an admissions tax. We understand that the city will need additional sources of revenue in the future, and that an admissions tax is the path of least resistance. Other forms of tax can and will impact residents, and admissions tax is much more selective and impacts the Newcastle residents the least. In summary, we've come to the realization that admissions tax is inevitable. What we don't understand is why a 5% is the only number being considered. In meeting with the city, I provided golf course revenue numbers and projections that would be subjected to the tax. We weren't required to provide information, but we wanted to be transparent and remain a good partner, so we thought it would be helpful to eliminate the assumptions and the estimates on the benefits of the tax to the city. The city has projected a balanced budget for 2025 with a healthy general fund. Looking forward, fiscal challenges don't arise until 2026 and beyond. So why does the admissions tax need to start at the maximum allowed 5%? In the financial given to the city, 3% admissions tax generates over $200,000 today, and with our annual price increases that we take at the golf club, that number will continue to grow. Starting at 3% doesn't mean the amount is locked in forever. You already have completed the heavy lifting, or you will have already completed the heavy lifting by implementing the tax. Changing the tax percentages based on need is a simpler administrative task. Does implementing a tax when the need hasn't been realized, especially one that adversely impacts a single business, really what governmental fiscal responsibility is all about? I urge the council to consider a 3% admissions tax, at least until we understand how it will impact the golf course's business, until the money for Newcastle is truly needed. We are committed to our partnership with the city, and isn't compromise at the heart of every partnership. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, David. I'm going to mess up this last name, excuse me. Chinmay Nagarkar. Sorry.
So I wasn't planning on making this statement. We came here today with some of my friends and acquaintances to talk about the Hindu Heritage Month proposal that might be in front of you, council members, today. But since I heard that there is some question about whether to support it or not, I thought I would make a comment. The Hindu community is one of the most patriotic and upstanding communities in this country. And in Newcastle, I've been living here for 10 years. I've never been very civic-minded in the sense of coming to these meetings. This is my first meeting. But I brought my children today because I want them to learn the importance of civic duty and participation. And so I thought I would make a statement in favor of the proposal. I just want to say that whether the proposal passes or not, it won't make a difference to how the Hindu community behaves and works and upholds the constitution of this country and the values of this country. Because the values that we have are the same values that everyone in this room has. And so I feel very comfortable with whatever way the decision goes. But I just wanted to come here and make the statement in favor and set an example for my children. So next time they see something they want to support, they can also come and make a statement. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chinmay. Next up, Darren Stott.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Thank you guys for your service to our city. I wanted to also just bring up the topic of the Hindu heritage conversation, partly because I feel like this brings us back to June when we had, I think, 250 Christians from our community show up here. Over 100 of them were turned away just because of occupancy, making public comment in regards to the concern of the pride flag being flown, and the pride flag being something that we as a faith really can't celebrate. There's no pride in our hearts towards some of the things that are done in those celebrations. The big concern was if we open this can, then we have to be fair and consistent to every other community. And Mr. Mayor, that was your concern, is if we start having specialized months for various communities, then we do have to be consistent in that. I love the Hindu community. My daughter brought my kids as well. So greetings to we have families here tonight. My daughter's 14. She built an orphanage in India. We got 25 kids there. Those are 25 Hindu children in our orphanage. So we love the Hindu community. Our concern is that if we do this tonight, which I think you probably will, then you're going to have to be consistent with every other community. And if you're not, it puts the city in a very vulnerable position for accusation and for prejudice and whatever bias. I don't see how you can be consistent with the amount of religions that are present within our community. So I'm worried, not because of October being celebrate the Hindu culture. I'm worried because you'll have to be consistent outside of religious communities as well, because that's the can that you opened in the month of June when you said we're not going to take into consideration the values of religion when we fly the pride flag. And so I would like to hear from the council members tonight that are going to be voting yes on this. And my question to you is, how are you going to be consistent to all of the religions here? Will you let our Christian flag, which we have one, fly for 30 days? And if the answer is no, then I don't know if that's a legal issue, the city lawyer, like if you're going to start picking and choosing what communities you're going to honor and celebrate, I think that just puts the city in a very awkward, and that was the reason why that whole June thing happened. There's a lot of public comments. Thanks. Bless you guys.
Thank you, Darren. Okay, that concludes the public comment. City Clerk, is there anybody online? Nobody online? Okay. All right. Next up is ceremonial presentations. We don't have any tonight. Next up after that is council comment. And I can't remember where I left off, council member. So council member Charbonneau, why don't you start us off, please?
Yeah, a few things tonight. I wanted to give my condolences and to the Iragon family and sincere rest in peace to Mr. Frank Iragani. I know he passed earlier in the month of September. I realize that might sound weird to folks, given I ran against him for city council, but my memory of Frank is someone that was always incredibly nice to me interpersonally, always laughed and appreciated the other elements of politics, and was never once nasty to me personally, always happy to talk with me. And there's a great write-up by the University of Washington Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity about a lot of the things he's done over the course of his life. And I was happy I attended a couple of his Stop Asian Hate rallies here in Newcastle during the pandemic. So I wanted to give my condolences to them. I know Felicita and his daughters are surviving him there. Newcastle Days, it was great. This is the first one we've had since Newcastle Days. Thank you to my colleagues for letting me read the 30th birthday proclamation. That was a ton of fun with the very large cake that we got to cut. I try to take it as an exercise in engaging with folks and just talking with folks. It's a good excuse too. So I got to talk with Scoutmaster Burris and a lot of the Scout members there, as well as folks from our UW clinic right across the street here from City Hall, including the gentleman who'd owned it for over 11 years and a couple of our doctors. I really appreciated that. And then just a couple of things that'll go by fast because it's on our consent agenda, but I was excited to see our new collective bargaining agreement with Teamsters Local 763. I'm glad our employees can feel safe and represented by a union. And I know it was a good, talking with the city manager, we think it was a really good and well-done process. I'm really excited. My former mentee from the UW Evans School of Public Policy, someone that I brought here to Newcastle City Hall and city staff helped talk to, and City Manager Pingle helped talk with him. We got to teach him a lot about government. He's just accepted a full scholarship to get his master's in public policy at Carnegie Mellon University, so I'm very excited for him. And then I'm going back, I'm also very excited, I'm going back next week, October 7th, I believe it's a Monday, to speak to the Bellevue College political science classes again. I did it a couple years ago, and I'm going to keep going back. It's been a great tradition, and I'm excited to get to continue to do that with those young adults, and some of them are in high school, given the way the curriculum works, so it's been a really great and positive experience. That is what I have.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning Frank Yergon. I had no idea. I had not heard that, so thank you. Condolences to his family. Councilmember Tallman.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. That's the first I've heard about Frank as well. Thanks for sharing. And we wish peace for Frank's family. Tonight, I'm going to comment on how we're managing our affairs. The scope of your city government is quite specific and narrow: to manage local affairs and services for the well-being of its residents. We support public safety, infrastructure, utilities, zoning, land use, recreation, culture, economic development. This city government should work together to improve public safety, quality of life, enforce laws, and ensure the effective and efficient use of our resources. None of these duties should be mired in politics. The Newcastle Municipal Code requires that respect for process and public interest must be every official's primary concern. Unfortunately, there are few people in leadership positions in our community who insist on disrupting what should be a continuous, nonpartisan, impartial, unifying exercise with unproductive political rhetoric. We can only unify this community by focusing on executing our prescribed duties, resisting partisan distractions, and holding people accountable for their destructive and divisive behaviors. The last item on tonight's agenda addresses this topic directly, so please stick around for that discussion. We had a town hall meeting on September 19th. We had a very low turnout. This is not an indictment against our citizens, but rather a wake-up call for our leaders, including me, to provide our citizens with an appealing and enthusiastic agenda and a safe, structured environment where we can share concerns and ideas without stifling controversy. These are just words, but it seems clear that we would benefit as a community with a narrower focus on the core duties that serve the entire community and allow the citizens the freedom to enjoy their chosen lifestyle in our limited but precious space. Thank you.
Councilmember Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. We had a town hall meeting on September the 19th over at the school. As he said, low attendance. The sound system was horrific. I was able to hear a little bit of what Mayor Clark had to say and some of what Councilmember Tallman had to say. The rest of it I couldn't. The city manager gave, I'm sure, a very good presentation on the budget, as well as Director Chambers. But I didn't hear any of their presentation. I did hear, I heard noise coming from all the people. They were some of the council members throwing comments to Councilmember Tallman and his safety committee. Some of them, I guess, I found out later, said that, well, he was having his meetings on secret. That's not true. He gave a report every council meeting on what they were doing. So if the people weren't here to hear the comments he made on the council, then they missed out on what the committee is doing. That's my report on the town hall meeting, but I want to welcome the folks here tonight. We appreciate you coming out and being a part of our meeting. Thank you for coming.
Councilmember Sherlock.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you all for coming tonight. Just didn't have anything planned, but yes, wanted to echo the condolences to Frank Yergon's family. he will be missed in this community. And I did not realize this was our first meeting since Newcastle days. So yes, huge kudos to Amy George especially, but all the staff that helped and all the volunteers, the Community Activities Commission. It was a wonderful event. I think we lucked out with the weather, but just the whole the way it was arranged and the layout was just really well done. So thank you to everybody who added to that effort.
Deputy Mayor?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City Council meeting. I came to know about Frank a few days ago and was very sorry to hear that. I have spent quite a lot of time with Frank. We went out canvassing together during the elections. So my deep condolences to his family. Yes, exciting Newcastle days. I think that was the biggest cake I have ever cut, that I will ever cut in the future. So it was fun, and thank you to all the efforts of all the members who participated in making that Newcastle Days a success.
Okay, thank you. Mayor's comments, I only have one tonight. Reminder that we are getting close to Veterans Day again, hard to believe. So we will have, like we have the last few years, a service, a ceremony downstairs at the flagpole, weather permitting, or it'll be in the parking garage. November 11th, Monday, November 11th at 9 o'clock, and there'll be an announcement. I'll put out something in the city clerk, and we'll put out something. So that's it for my comments tonight. Moving on to council committees, Finance Committee. Finance Committee report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Clark. The Finance Committee met on September the 25th. We got a snapshot of the August report from Director Chambers. The city looks very good in its finances at this point. Our revenues coming in pretty much as projected, and our expenses are pretty well even up with that. The Finance Committee did approve the lobbyist for this coming year, and that's pretty much what the Finance Committee did.
Okay, thank you. The Salary and Benefits Committee did not meet. How about the Economic and Community Development Committee? No meeting? Okay, Public Safety Committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Clark. So the Ad hoc Public Safety Committee met on September 16th, 4:30 to 6 o'clock p.m. Just some of the meeting highlights. So we have teams where we're each assigned specific areas of public engagement. Len Troutman and Kyrie Teshuta are responsible for engaging with the apartments and multifamily member complexes. They created 2 documents to inform residents about our about our mission and objectives, as well as a letter inviting targeted recipients to reach out to our community for support in sharing concerns, experiences, suggestions. So what they would do is they go to apartment complex. If the manager wasn't there, or even if they were there, they give them a letter inviting them to respond or share concerns, or just to meet with us and talk about public safety, get some ideas. On Block Watch, Business Watch, HOAs, Amber and Elizabeth. So that's Amber Elam and Elizabeth Widseth. Amber's been conducting multiple meetings with her HOA, flock security representatives, and the neighboring HOA neighborhood in an effort to have flock security cameras installed in their, to help identify perpetrators. And so it's an ongoing process, but she's been really valuable in connecting with the flock people and helping us institute that program, not just in the city, but in the neighborhoods as well. On the social media, resident follow-up side of it, Philip and I have reached out to several residents who have posted public safety concerns on social media. I have one follow-up phone call with a resident who returned one of my messages scheduled for this Thursday. And I am going to be reaching out with Mercer Island City Council members to obtain a copy of their new public camping ordinance. We spent most of the rest of that time discussing our preparations for the town hall meeting. Moving forward, the ad hoc Public Safety Committee meeting notes and all pertinent materials are now posted on the city website under meeting materials, council committees, ad hoc Public Safety Committee. So whenever we have any updates or documentation, or just meeting notes, you can find those on our city website very easily, very accessible. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns about any of that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, regional committees. Do we have any regional? Go ahead, Councilmember Charbonneau.
So Regional Transit Committee was canceled this last month. Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Advisory Committee, I could not attend due to a work conflict. I was unable to move this time, but the general gist was talking about the request for proposals for the new crisis care centers that are coming, and cities partnering with them for those items. The big item is the Public Issues Committee, which had our, our large sort of one in-person meeting this last month. We do one in-person meeting a year. This was in Mercer Island. A few takeaways from that. For folks that are on our own council that are interested in applying for regional committees, those are due October 17th. Those are live now. So you can apply for them. It is important to note too that we should communicate about it, because what is the practice of Sound City Association is if they see two applicants from the same city, they will throw both those applications out. They want one person to apply from a city, and if we can't figure it out amongst ourselves, they're not going to consider us. So I think talking about it is important. I would plug as well the Public Issues Committee asked me to. There's a open seat on the nominating committee for the Public Issues Committee, which is the group that decides who gets on what different regional committees. They asked me to apply, which I was appreciative of because they had appreciated some of my comments about making the process more accessible in the past. So I'm going to be doing that. So hopefully I'm happy to help folks with that process if they're unsure. What I talked about previously about the change in public defense standards and the caseloads for public defenders, which was also something we mentioned in terms of our budget, those hearings are coming up. I don't know if it's safe to assume, City Manager, if you'll keep us posted on those, or we can distribute that information in some way to council members.
So the public hearing that happened on the 25th, I gave council a heads up on that in the weekly update. As those come along, I'll keep everybody apprised.
Awesome, thank you, appreciate that. And then, yes, the other large one was there was a really comprehensive guide to urban tree protection in King County from someone who is an urban forestry specialist, Joanna Nelson with the county. I reached out to Sound City Association. I got that forwarded to Development Director Fitzgibbons as well as City Manager Pingle. I think that's a useful, I hope that would be, I think that's a potentially very useful tool for comp plan, which you're discussing later tonight as well. And those are the large takeaways there. There is, the city of Kenmore is going to be writing a letter and asking other cities to sign on to that, but they were not present and sparse on details, so I figure we can just wait to see what that letter is when it comes our way. That is what I have.
You're not aware, there's no conflict in this council about two people applying for a seat. I mean, you're just talking in general, right?
Yeah, so if it was two council members from Issaquah both applied for regional housing committee, they would throw out both those applications. It's just if they don't want to see multiple applications from the same city, yeah, they want one from each city, because there's 38 member cities of Sound City Association. So if they, that's, yeah, I think that's pretty much their larger point.
Yeah, agreed. We should be talking to each other. Okay, any other regional committees? Okay, I had a North Mayor's meeting this morning, and I sent out an email to all the council essentially saying if you have feedback for the Sound Cities Association, please supply or send it to the president, Mary Lou Pauley. So for the audience members, Sound Cities Association is a collection of, like Paul said, 38 cities that we join together as a regional coalition to kind of have a political voice. because otherwise Seattle and King County would kind of drown us out in most things. So the Sound Cities Association has a director who's resigning or he's leaving, and a new one is being sought. So the president, who's one of the members of the SCA, is asking for feedback on how to make the SCA better. That's essentially what that is. So, okay, that was it for regional committees. Moving on, we have a CAC report in the agenda tonight. Is there anybody here to present that? No, I don't think so. So the report can be read in the agenda package for the audience. It's online. You can read that. And then moving on, next thing is city manager report. City manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Just so the council's aware, I believe all of you would have also received, going back to the Kenmore letter, I believe you also received an email from the government relations representative from PSE regarding that issue. If you didn't or you don't have it, I can forward it on to you, but please let me know. But you should have received something from Kenmore as well as something from PSE regarding that issue. So just want to make sure you're aware of that. Also, just quickly regarding the budget, if there's questions or anything that you didn't get to ask or things that you want to see, please reach out, whether it's tonight or sometime between now and the next study session, just so that we can be aware. And we'll, just like we did last year, we'll continue to update numbers as they come in, especially with property tax and new construction and how that works. But as we get comments and questions, if there are adjustments that we can make, we'll continue to make those, and then we'll provide that kind of summary to the council as we go into the next meeting, so that we can, the council knows where we're at and where we've been. And really the goal is to be as thorough as possible, or as thorough as the council wants to be before you're ready to adopt a budget. But if we can, don't wait until October 15th to, express a desire or a want. And don't wait until November 5th to express a desire or a want. We can make those adjustments as we move forward and be more efficient that way. And then our hour budget study sessions can be valuable. So that's it.
Thank you, city manager. Any questions for the city manager? Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. Is there any desired changes or alterations to tonight's consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, show the consent agenda approved as written. Okay, next up is a public hearing. Okay, we're going to have a public hearing on the 2025 preliminary budget. Okay, have a little spiel here. Okay, we are now talking about item 10.1, the 2025 preliminary budget. The public hearing is now open. It's 7:35 to receive comments on the 2025 preliminary budget. Members of the council, this is a public hearing. This evening we have Finance Director Chambers to give us a short overview. At the conclusion of the overview, she will be available for questions or comments. Then we will take public testimony. Okay, Director Chambers, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad you introduced that as a short explanation, because that's what it will be. So as you can see in the agenda bill, we just use this to highlight the totals for the budget, because all the details are in the preliminary budget document. So for 2025, our preliminary budget appropriation, which is all expenditures that we're looking at, is $27,763,074. The operating portion is $15,345,840. The capital budget portion is $5,551,893. Debt service is $467,207. And transfers are $5,648,134. And then, as we discussed, we currently still have $750,000 in there for other financing uses, but we anticipate to be lowering that for the adopted budget. And with that, I will turn it over to comments.
Questions or comments from the council for Director Chambers? Okay, excuse me. Okay, at this time, there is a sign-up sheet, and if you had previously signed up, you may come forward to address the council. I'll call you in a moment. If you are here to address the council, it is not necessary that you be a proponent or opponent. Just come forward, give your name and address for the record. If your comments are in the form of a question, the question will be noted and answered at the conclusion of the public testimony, and then we will have final members of the comments by the members of the council. So is there anybody signed up? Nobody signed up for public comments, therefore, okay. Anybody else from the council have a final comment they would like to make? Okay, seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Okay, that was the quickest public hearing we'll ever have. Okay. Stupid thing. Excuse me, folks, while I try to get back to page 1. All right, the old-fashioned way. Okay, the next up on our agenda item is we have no unfinished business tonight, no unfinished business. We are moving on to general business. Okay, the first item on the general business, item 12.1, is approval of ordinance 2024-662 budget adjustment number 2. Director Chambers, back to you.
Yes, thank you. So before you tonight is budget amendment number 2. This, for the most part, is a housekeeping budget amendment. We do have additional revenues in transportation capital. We have additional grant funds in the amount of $442,325, as well as almost $21,000 in reimbursement from CCUD. These have been confirmed since the budget was last amended, and so we need to amend the budget again to include this revenue because the project costs are also anticipating this revenue. And so the primary increase in expenditures is coming for Project T11, and that was we had some carryover from last year along with the actual project costs that came in for 2024. And again, that $440,000 in additional revenue is for that project specifically. So those two things kind of offset each other, but we do need to amend the budget in order to receive those grant funds and expend the project funds. The rest of the items that are located in the line item detail, which is in Exhibit A for the ordinance, are primarily, as I said, housekeeping items. So we have some things where we had engineering costs that were higher or lower than we anticipated, and then construction costs that had similar changes. And so what we're doing within this amendment is just moving the budget allowance between those lines. It's not something that we have to do legally, but we wanted to put it in front of you so you could see that the changes that we would like to make to the budget to match up to what the actual estimates and project costs are coming in as this year. There is two lines that also do need to be amended, and those are the salary lines. So for finance salaries and city activity salaries, we have included just a slight increase because that is one item that has to be amended per budget. It cannot go over. And so we're including those just because the initial estimate that we had was a little bit low for the work that's been done this year. But for both of those options, we have offsetting lines. So it's not an increase to the budget total. It's just we're moving it from another line item. So with that, as I said, this is primarily housekeeping. The total effect to the budget itself is an additional $463,060, and that is in the transportation capital fund. With that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, questions on this adjustment for Director Chambers? No? Any motions on the floor?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I move adoption of ordinance 2024-662, amending ordinance 2023-658 and ordinance 2024-661, amending the 2024 budget and amending the 2024 salary schedule as presented.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 2024-662 and its appropriate amendments. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Any comments, Deputy Mayor, Councilmember Charbonneau?
Thank you, Director Chambers, for your hard work on this.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 2024-662, amending ordinance 2023-658 and ordinance 2024-661, amending the 2024 budget and amending the 2024 salary schedule as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Okay, moving on. Next up is item 12.2, Hindu Heritage Month proclamation. Deputy Mayor, you brought this agenda item. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So proclamations has been a tradition of Newcastle for many years. And it's just a way of kind of recognizing the community and acknowledging the community. The Indian diaspora has made a lot of contributions to this country, especially in the field of technology and science, and in all our top IT companies are run by a lot of them. The proclamation just recognizes the significance of those contributions, and just about the Hindu American community, our city, just the cultural richness and economic strength. It is just a testament to our commitment to diversity and inclusivity. And that's why I just urge my fellow council members to join me in supporting this proclamation, just to honor the vibrant Hindu American community in our city.
Are there any other comments on this agenda item? Councilmember Tallman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So within the last month, I was in Robbinsville, New Jersey. I visited the Swaminarayan Aksharam Hindu Temple in Robbinsville. It's a very impressive plaza. It's an impressive site. It has the largest elliptical dome of traditional stone architecture ever constructed, nearly 2 million cubic feet of stone. Most impressive is the noble and all-inclusive practice of Hinduism, which I learned a lot about on that visit. A quote from Pramukh Swami Maharaj is posted on the large plaque outside the entrance of this temple, and it's moving. In the joy of others lies our own. In the progress of others rests our own. In the good of others abides our own. Know this to be the key to peace and happiness. This is a place that genuinely promotes and practices peace and harmony for all. I encourage everyone to visit this temple and absorb the spirit of Hinduism. Newcastle Municipal Code 2.68.040B states, recognizing that stewardship for the public interest must be their primary concern, officials will work for the common good of the people of Newcastle and not for any private or personal interests, and they will ensure fair and equal treatment of all persons, claims, and transactions coming before the City Council boards and commissions. Our job as city leaders is to create a safe and welcoming environment for people to practice their faith and lifestyles, but our code demands that we do so impartially. Everything we do must be with the interest of the entire community. I've stated this fact several times. In law, in business, and in politics, consistency is our best friend. As a city council member, I have taken an oath to faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this council position. I'm sworn to remain neutral. I support the principles of Hinduism and would love to see more visible practice like this exercised throughout our community on a regular basis. But I must abide by our code and vote no to a motion that directs our community to support a proclamation that does not serve the entire community. I really appreciate the efforts. I appreciate Hinduism and what you do for our community, for our country. But as a city council member, we must be neutral in these matters. Thank you.
Other general comments? Okay, you have a comment? What's that? Go ahead.
Thank you. These mics are much louder tonight. I just want to say that I am supporting this because I don't know if everyone understands the difference between equality and equity. Equity is very different from being equal. When you talk about nonpartisan and making, comments about it needs to benefit everyone in the community, that skews towards the majority and the status quo. And when we're talking about equity, it's about giving assistance to marginalized groups that have not been able to be equal in the past. And so raising up a marginalized group and saying you are welcome here is bringing equity, it's welcoming in, and it's giving them, it may feel like it's putting them up higher, but it's actually giving them equity so that we are all equal and we're welcoming everyone. And so that's why I support these types of proclamations, because we talk about wanting to have more community engagement and bring in new voices and bring more people to our town hall, for example. And this is how we do it. We say out loud that people that have not felt welcome or seen in the past, we say out loud that you are. And the hope is that they'll come out and come help our community be better. And so that's why I support these types of proclamations.
Okay, I have a couple comments. So the month of October is also German American Heritage Month, Polish American Heritage Month, Filipino American Heritage Month, Italian American Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, National Bullying Prevention Month, National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Dwarfism Awareness Month. I could go on. I have 4 pages here of totals of 300 things that are observed in just October, and I probably don't have them all because it was just a cursory online search. So I do not downplay the importance of our Hindu community, our minority communities, everybody in a community, right? I've said it back in June, I say it constantly. Everybody in Newcastle is equally as important to me as a mayor, as the next person, even if you don't really like me, I don't care, right? Because I'm gonna work for everybody. So if we start saying that this group or that group, and I said it in June, gets a special recognition, what about the groups that we're not recognizing? It's not that the Hindu group does not deserve recognition, but we'd have to observe all 300 of these things and more every month. We'd never do anything but do proclamations. So, I know people are not going to be happy, some people perhaps, that's my opinion, but my opinion is consistent that we don't need proclamations. We just need to accept everybody for who they are. We're all citizens of Newcastle, and we're all equally important, and we're all, children of God, essentially, right? So who am I to say that you're different if God says we're all the same? So I'm not going to be voting for this proclamation or any other proclamation. Now, I know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to say, but Mayor Clark, you signed the proclamation for Newcastle Days. And yes, I did. And what was that proclamation? That was a proclamation for Newcastle, for all of Newcastle residents. It was all-inclusive, a 100% proclamation. So that was easy, although I didn't want to have that on the agenda. It was on the agenda. But that's much different than saying this group or that group or that group or that group or this cause or this event or this situation. So I appreciate that, the some people are here and they're showing their children tonight how the civic process works. And I respect that, and I respect the things that you do in the community, and I respect that somebody was willing to bring this, but I'm not going to say that we need to keep making differences between people. So I will be voting no, and maybe I'll be outvoted, I don't know. Any other comments? Councilmember Charbonneau?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to speak directly to the folks the Hindu folks that chose to join us tonight. Thank you for joining us. This is about you, and it should be about you and not about the political discussion that's going on here. So thank you for reaching out to us over email and letting me know. I did not know October was Hindu Heritage Month, and I'm glad I learned that. And thank you for showing up. So when I was a program manager for a mental health nonprofit, I would regularly go to accept proclamations of Mental Health Awareness Month and Suicide Prevention Month at a lot of cities across King County. And just know that in so many other spaces, in dozens of other cities, you would go, you'd get to be at the start of the meeting, you'd hear a proclamation celebrating, your community. You'd get a nice piece of paper, and then you wouldn't have to sit through the whole meeting and be subject to all of this right now. So thank you for being here. Regardless of, votes that happen, I appreciate you being here. I think specifically, I really appreciate the gentleman who came up to speak and talk about setting an example for his kids. Something I would tell them, as someone that got involved in politics quite young, is be wary of people that love to talk about supporting you, use a lot of words to talk about how supportive they are of you, and then their actions don't line up with that. Be wary of people that say one thing and vote another way, and hold those people accountable. I'm genuinely sorry that this is a politicized process. I think we could even talk about this in another day, and if we had all of our council here, I believe personally this would pass, and we'd be able to celebrate you like we should. And I'm sorry that it's, won't maybe not be that way tonight, but it won't be that way if you continue to be involved. Please, I appreciate you engaging with us. Please continue to engage with us. Know that what might happen in the room tonight is not a normal, and that you are valued.
Okay, do we have any motions?
Thank you, Councilmember Sherlock. Those were really nice words and, very well articulated. And thank you, Councilmember Charbonneau. You were right on. I will still, in support of my fellow Hindu community, I will still make this motion in the name of, we talk about inclusion and diversity throughout in schools and colleges and everywhere, but hard to see that in action. But let's give it a try. I move to adopt the proclamation as presented, officially recognizing and celebrating October 2024 as Hindu American Awareness and Appreciation Month in the city of Newcastle.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the proclamation. Deputy Mayor, you want to speak any more to this?
I think a lot has been said. Again, this is just appreciating a certain community. If other people want to come and make proclamations, they're more than welcome to do that. As we said, that making proclamation is a tradition of Newcastle. Nobody is stopping them. We will, I will support, if people want to come and make proclamations in different months, why not? It doesn't cost us anything. It's just a little, recognition and appreciation. It's just making a certain community feel good. Nothing wrong with that.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Laconia, for inviting this community here and sharing that part of yourself. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you all for being here.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the proclamation as presented, officially recognizing and celebrating October 2024 as Hindu American Awareness and Appreciation Month in the city of Newcastle. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. Okay, motion tied 3-3, so it fails. Moving on to the next item. Okay, approval of ordinance 2024-663 is our next business item, the admissions tax. City manager, who will start out this?
I'll do it. Good evening again, council. Before you tonight is drafted ordinance 2024-663, adopting an admissions tax. In the ordinance before you, it is 5%, as was presented during the public comment. I've met with David Hine a few times. He did provide additional information, similar to what he had said, where we've been assuming that a 5% tax would garner about $200,000. He provided information that a 3% tax might garner the same. And as far as what different percentages might garner, you can extrapolate from there. Again, the tax generally would apply to any business with a fee for admission to their service or goods, such as subscriptions, membership fees, event ticket sales, or one-time admissions, or any other fee for entry. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for the city manager? Go ahead, Councilmember Sherlock.
Thank you. Just curious, so I've heard that the golf club has provided numbers. Do you have those numbers, or do you think that they're correct assumptions?
I don't have any reason to believe otherwise, I guess. What we went through with the golf club was where they already have courses that have an admissions tax. We were able to determine that similar things would be taxed with ours, and they provided numbers accordingly. And so they provided the numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions for the city manager? Go ahead, Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. So I guess the idea has been talked about of the number, and correct me if you believe this is inaccurate. I was told that a 5% emission tax would, we think, generate about $330,000 in revenue, roughly, as opposed to the $200,000 in the packet. And then we think, 3% might generate around $200,000. So I guess it was discussed in public comment by Mr. Heim about the idea of starting at 3% and then escalating at potentially at a later time. Can you tell me the procedural process for altering, if we were to jump from like 3% to 5%, for example, and we were to jump to 5% at a later time, what is the nuts and bolts procedural process of that? Because I want to wrap my brain around that.
So it would be similar to what you're doing tonight. You have to adopt an ordinance, and then changing the amount of the tax would be adopting another ordinance.
So we would just direct city staff to bring back another ordinance at a future time, and then they would bring back that ordinance with 5%, and then it's not a budget amendment, it's not you need a stronger majority, it's just straight up ordinance.
Right. So certainly the timing would matter. Is if we were gonna, if the council decided to do something less than 5%, tonight you'll have to adopt that ordinance as amended with whatever percentages the council decides on. And then if we were doing something mid-year, for sure, that would affect the budget, and it doesn't necessarily require a budget adjustment because we're talking about revenue, but from a staff perspective, we would love to stick to our fiscal years if we're going to make changes to the percentage.
So yeah, we're going back in 3% and 5% anyways. So the average fee for a golfer on 18 hole is $144. And a 5% would be only like $151. Do you think anybody who pays $144 would care about would worry about that, oh, I have to pay $7 more, so it's $151. So as Councilmember Charbonneau mentioned in the town hall, these people are heavy price inelastic. And what we can do is, right now we only have assumptions. Like, we don't know how much it is. Like, this is again an assumption that was given by the golf course. Our consultants did 5% and they assumed $200,000. So we do not know, and we have a revenue problem that's staring on our face. So I don't think so. This is going to be passed on to the consumers, and they would not even blink an eye paying, from 144 to 151. It's barely anything for them. So rather than, putting in more time, going back and forth and having us start work on this again and put more time, we can start with 5% and we can see, how much the revenue is coming. And if the golf course comes back and says that, there's a lot of attrition happening and they're losing a lot of customers, or this is causing a problem, we can go back and reduce it. But then we do not know. I mean, we are all talking about assumptions. So I think 5% is very, very minimal when it comes to, when we convert that amount to dollars. It's like $6, $7. It barely even matters at this point. But it does matter to us. As a city, we have a revenue problem. We've been talking about that. So I would say let's go with 5% for now and see. Let's look at the numbers because, again, these are all assumptions. So at least we'll get some numbers here on the table. So I would, still propose a 5%.
Any other comments about this? Go ahead. Go ahead again.
Thank you. So I guess for me, there's an element of being a good neighbor with the golf club. And in the past, so I've been on the council for almost 5 years, and this has been discussed multiple times. We've never gotten to the point of, well, maybe we have voted on it in the past, and it's been voted down. And I've voted against it in the past, and the reason was because there are a couple reasons. Number one, the $200,000 estimate that came from consultants before I even became on the council was, as far as I've heard, completely taken out of thin air. There was no actual backing behind it. So that was one reason why I was skeptical from the beginning. The other reason was I heard from a lot of people that, not that this ordinance is directly trying to single out one specific business, but because of the way that our city, how the size of our city and the types of businesses we don't have a lot, it ends up basically singling out one business. That did seem a little unfair. And then on top of that, in the past, probably the biggest reason I didn't vote for it was it really didn't solve the problem that we had. Now, that being said, that was in the past. This is a new conversation, a new council, and I'm glad we're having these conversations. Now we have new information. Number one, the golf club and David Hine have engaged and been willing to give us actual numbers, which is really helpful, I believe. And in that, the new information for me is it's more than what we were thinking. So I don't understand why we wouldn't, if 200,000 is what is in the preliminary budget, it's what we're a much better resource than what we had before. So we have more reason to believe that number. Couple that with hearing from the golf club and this idea of compromise, because it's part of our community, that's the part that really gets me. And I would love to see 3% now, and kind of, I guess, the same but opposite of what Deputy Mayor Lakocha is saying. Like, she's saying 5% now, we can always bring it down. Let's be honest, that never happens in reality, right? And so I'm saying 3% now, we can always go up to 5% if we need to. that's what I'm advocating for.
Councilmember Griffin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. We seem to get confused about what this tax is all about. It's not a tax against the golf course. It's a tax against the users of the golf course. It's a user tax. It doesn't cost the golf course anything unless it might affect people coming there and having, playing golf or having dinner or whatever. Not likely that 5% is going to turn very many people away if they want to go up there. If they're going to spend $150 to go and play a little golf and have a couple of beers, I don't think 5% is going to make any difference to those people. I feel that it's been presented. Well, you picked this out, single us out as a single business. That's true because it's the only golf course in the city. But on the other hand, it's not a tax against the golf course. And we seem to get confused about that. A year or so ago, we talked about it, and well, you can't tax that because the owners of that wouldn't like it. Well, of course they might not like it, but their effort of collecting it is no different from the sales tax. And you don't have a problem collecting the sales tax and paying it over, I'm sure, because it's what you have to do. So I'm guessing that we don't know what effect it'll have on the users of the golf course. Probably not very little because 5% is not a whole bunch of money for them. So I think that we should stop the confusion and figure out, well, okay, is this something we want to do or not? But, we can't beat it around the bush and say, well, it looks this way or it looks that way, because we could be here all night.
Councilmember Tillman.
I guess we're going to be here all night. So the way that Councilmember Lacodia put it, it doesn't seem like a 5% out-of-pocket expense for the golfers is egregious. What gets me is that we have a sustainability model that has multiple options for putting the burden on the homeowners, on the taxpayers, the homeowners, who many of them have fixed incomes. Before we go down that path, I think we have a lot of avenues that we need to examine before we start putting the burden back on the homeowners, and it doesn't feel like this 5% tax that we're proposing is going to hurt anybody. So that's my position on this.
I have a final comment then. So, so I'm not a tax guy. I don't like any taxes, right? I've heard the argument that it won't affect people. Every single dollar affects somebody who's got to pay it, and maybe, they're just rich people, they don't care or whatever. Maybe it's somebody who's, goes up there for the one day of relief or something and they need to get away and they like to golf. I don't know. Taxes never go down, right? Like Councilmember Sherlock said. So, despite good intentions, they never go down. So I'm inclined to not vote for any tax at this point because we simply don't need it at this point, and our economy is in the tank, and everybody can use every dollar that they have available to them, regardless of who you are. So that's my position. So with that, do we have a motion on the floor?
I move adoption of ordinance 663, adopting a new chapter 3.32 of the Newcastle Municipal Code to establish an admission tax of 5% and provide regulations regarding the same as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the ordinance 2024-663, adopting a new chapter of the Newcastle Municipal Code, establishing an admissions tax. Do you have any additional comments, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is the least impacting tax to the citizens of Newcastle, as we keep talking about that, we have a revenue problem and we might have to tax our citizens. This is the only tax which is the least impacting, and again, it's not against the golf course. It's going to be passed on to the consumers, the most inelastic consumers. So I I think for now, this is our best option for a revenue source.
Councilmember Griffin, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay. The motion on the floor is,
Can I make amendment to the motion?
oh, I'm sorry, yeah,
Okay,
go
thank
right
you.
ahead, my bad. Go
It's
ahead.
okay, it's okay. I move to amend the motion to change the admissions tax to 3%.
Okay, second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Okay, we're back to the main motion. The motion on the floor is to move to adopt ordinance 2024-663, adopting a new chapter 3.32 of the Newcastle Municipal Code to establish an admissions tax of 5% and provide regulations regarding the same as presented. All in favor?
I
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Motion passes 5-1. Mayor Clark opposed. Okay, next item. Okay, next up on our agenda, item 12.4, discussion of an I-405 toll letter to the Washington State Department of Transportation. So where we left this at a previous meeting was there's a proposal to increase taxation on 405 and other roads. So Councilmember Charbonneau asked if he could take it to one of your committees, and were you able to do that? Do you have any comments for us?
Do that by general consent because there wasn't, opposition. I think if there's opposition, either we can draft a letter and put it back in front of the council, or we can take a vote, then the council can direct staff to draft a letter, and then we can send it. We can do it either way. I don't know that there is a incredible hurry about it, and so if we needed to get it out tomorrow, I would say, council, take a vote and direct staff what you want us to do. But without that, we're not in a hurry. It may be worthwhile for us to put a letter together and bring it back to the council.
How about we do that?
Okay, I personally would want to see it and see if I can get an answer to the question over email, so, okay.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Next item is the discussion of the 2024 to 2044 comprehensive plan. And so in our agenda package is the agenda bill with the preliminary comprehensive plan. And who is going to lead us off tonight on this discussion? Director Fitzgibbons, go ahead.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for having us here. We also have Charlie Gadzik, Chair of the Planning Commission, here with us. I just have a few slides to show you. As noted in the agenda bill, there haven't been significant changes since May to the direction of the plan. We're just diving in more detail into the policies and goals and the verbiage itself. So here we are, it's October already, and we're having our question and answer. And then on October 4th, we are going to be sending a draft of the housing element to King County so that we can get responses from them hopefully by the end of the calendar year. And then on October 7th, which is less than a week away, we have the Special Planning Commission meeting where we're hoping to get through the remaining elements, including transportation, the CFP, the Capital Financial Facilities Plan, utilities, and I'm forgetting one, and one more. And then, and economic development, I'm sorry. And then hopefully within a couple weeks of that meeting, we'll have a draft plan for public review and to send to the Department of Commerce. So fingers crossed, please. Next slide. So I just wanted to point out a few things. We talked about this in May, but I wanted to kind of show you how it's presenting itself in the plan. One was this future land use map. So this looks very similar to a zoning map, but this is different because it just shows you from a very high level what uses we're anticipating where within the city. The one difference is that after getting some feedback from the community on potential interest in nodes, was looking at where the Shell station is currently over on Lake Washington Boulevard and 112th. Just looking at that in terms of, could that be a small area of neighborhood serving businesses? The Shell station is already zoned neighborhood business, so that's already its use. And then across the street is the Porter Jensen Jewelers, and that is actually zoned R6, although the use itself is currently a jewelry store, and there are a couple of, I believe, condominiums attached. And it's a very old building, as you probably have noticed. So the idea there is, maybe to allow those uses to organically grow as they want to, depending on who comes in and buys the property. So that's just a small area of Newcastle, but we could see how it works for the city. And one thing to note with the future land use map is that even if something on here changes, a piece of property zoned, so for example, zoned R6, that wanted to become, let's say, neighborhood business, would have to go through a zoning change. So that would still come back through the Planning Commission and the City Council. So this is just a kind of a growth forecast, or it just allows a little bit more. Next slide. Secondly, I wanted to bring up that we've noticed a lot, and I know you all have heard about the concerns about street connectivity. And this map actually shows future locations of potential street connectivity. And there's less than 10 because one of these is actually already under construction. So those are the ones in the kind of light pink color, mostly on the western side of the city, and then on the eastern side of the city at 144th Avenue. And what this does is give a lot of transparency. When people are moving to the city, they can see this map and know what is being proposed. And it also gives the city, much like on our trails map, when a developer comes in, we can say, this is a planned right of way to be extended. So it just helps with setting expectations for the future street grid. But as you can see, really there aren't that many future connections on here. Next. This is the Newcastle Parks 10-minute walkshed map. And I just wanted to show how this presents itself and what's something that really is helpful about using this 10-minute walkshed. It's a little bit hard to see on your screens, but there's kind of a dark green layered over a dark green color, and the darkest green areas, for example, can I see my mouse? Here, oops, sorry. You can see like here, these areas, because the overlay of that is within this 10-minute walkshed, are served by trails. And then you can see there are pockets of areas that aren't served by trails. We are further refining this map. It needs to be a bit fine-tuned, but you will see that update soon. But it's a really nice visual tool. Hopefully you agree. And then another big change in the plan is, of course, the incorporation of more history in the plan, and it talks about events that have affected home ownership for different populations. And it goes back through even before King County was a county. So it's not necessarily things that the city of Newcastle has done, but it just shows kind of the transition of history and how we got to where we are in terms of who's owning homes, who's renting, and what kind of chances they've had to own homes. So if there are any questions on that, I'm happy to take those. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, we have policies that are still being reviewed and considered. And hopefully we'll have that wrapped up within a couple of weeks. So from there, if anyone has questions, happy to take them.
Okay, go ahead. Do I see your hand? Councilmember Tallman, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron, for that summary. So, first of all, it's daunting the level of detail that you guys have gone through to build this plan. And so, if anybody should be paid, you guys should be paid a lot for this, but you're all volunteers, so thank you for your services on that. In the policies, I appreciate the focus on the safety elements for motorized transportation use and non-motorized pedestrian use. I'd like to bring up a point that was raised by a resident regarding electric bicycles. In policy 82 and policy 83, can we expand that to include distinctions between different classes of electric bicycles? This individual has a brother who was not in this state, but walking on a path that was a mixed use walk and bicycle, and one of these larger, higher class, very heavy electric bicycles struck him and killed him. And so I'm just curious if in this policy, we can maybe put a cap on certain types of electric bicycles where paths are being used, or even around where people are walking versus bicycles, if that's something you guys have even discussed. So it's just a safety matter.
We can definitely, actually, I think we'll be talking about transportation first at the next meeting.
Okay.
And I think that would be something that we would need to discuss with Director Bronze in terms of what is street legal and what is not. We'd have to be careful with that. But if nothing else, a policy could consider, creating considerations for the types of non-motorized vehicles that would be
Yeah,
on different
limiting
types of
certain
paths.
classes or something like that, where residents are afoot.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. One more thing on the housing section. Page 154 states, because recent state legislation has significant impact on Newcastle's future development, the housing element has been broken into two parts. One, where general information about Newcastle and housing goals and policies are provided, and two, Appendix A, which provides a more introspective look at the city's history as part of King County, which considered Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities and different levels of incomes. It feels like this statement implies that Newcastle has a history associated with King County's historic discrimination practices. But in Appendix A, on the last page, it says Newcastle as a city, when it was analyzed, is found that there are no examples of deeds with racial restrictions or evidence of redlining in Newcastle. So it appears that our history doesn't have any of that type of discrimination. Is it necessary to have all of that rhetoric about discrimination in our plan when it doesn't apply to our city?
We are required to address these elements as part of our plan. However, you brought, let's see, where was that paragraph that you mentioned?
Page 150, the very beginning,
Yeah.
page 154.
Oh, of the packet. Okay. Maybe-
Yeah, the packet.
Which provides more introspective focus cities. Yeah, and it may be that this sentence is misleading and that it says it provides a more introspective look at the city's history as part, I mean, it's really it's the cities in the last 20 years and how we've grown as a single-family neighborhood, which is consistent with the growth of King County. But we could, maybe it's just the use of the word city's history, and maybe it's the area's history or the region's history, or.
Well, it's not really semantics. It is, there's a lot of pages talking about discrimination that doesn't apply to our city.
But it does apply, I would argue that it does apply to our city. And the reason being, and then I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump there, but
No, it's okay.
I would say that
because of the historic requirements and the different laws that the appendix outlines, state constitution that kept non-residents from owning land, adopted the Alien Land Law, which prohibited non-residents from leasing or renting land. There were restrictions and barriers put up to non-white populations owning land, and in addition, even the federal government was enacting laws that put up these barriers. And so what you see over time is that, it's said time and time again that one of the best ways to increase wealth is through property ownership in the United States. And so who has had historically the ability to own land are white populations. And the non-white populations have not had much time to accumulate that wealth. And that's where we get to the title, which is racially disparate impacts. And so it is a regional, and you can see that by looking at the included documents, that especially there's that population map. The 1978 population distribution map that shows Newcastle at a very low population. And that's where the conclusion that, up until a lot of these practices weren't able to be allowed any longer, Newcastle itself as a city hasn't demonstrated some of these biases, but the area definitely has, and it's real in our area.
Is that about housing types, or is that about skin color?
Well, I mean, I think it all plays a factor. When there aren't opportunities for people to own different kinds of housing, obviously there's a cost to that, right? There aren't the opportunities to start off in in a starter home, right? When all that's being built are 5,000 square foot homes, then you don't have a 1,200 square foot home for a family to start in.
Is that a condition of race or a condition of income?
It used to be both. Now, it's less of a condition of race, although there are studies that show that people still have implicit biases.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that everything pertains to our community as it stands or as it was, and that we're not following any social agenda just because the county or the state requires us to.
Yeah.
So I am 100% against any type of discrimination of any kind. But if it doesn't exist in our community, it doesn't feel like we should have the label on our plan or on our community, which seems to be, it would be a little bit damaging to the morale of our community.
I see.
So,
I can understand that concern, for sure. And
All
that
right,
could be
well,
something we talk about.
I appreciate the discussion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead.
Thank you, Director Fitzgibbons, as well as Planning Commission, Chair of the Planning Commission, Gadsik, thank you for coming tonight. A few things here. One, I very much support having the element about discrimination. I think the effects of redlining are deep impacting and long-term, and that's not a universal view of the city council that was just shared. So objectively, thank you for explaining all that and talking through all that. I think I'm not comfortable not having an element talking about all of that in our comprehensive plan. A few things. One, I had in my one-on-one meeting with our city manager recently, he said something that I thought was very useful to repeat and share with this larger group. So I'm going to do that. I'm not taking credit myself because it was an idea he had. And I asked him specifically, can I tell everyone that? He said yes. So this is if you can, Aaron, could you go back to the timeline slide, or who's ever controlling the, I'm sorry. It's like at the very start, yeah. So looking at this snapshot, we can start doing things early, but there's not a large pressure to. There's a lot of information here. So what was suggested to me by the city manager, which is something I really like and I would push for, is that we have a meeting December 3rd. We have a city council meeting December 3rd, and then traditionally what we've done is we've canceled the second December meeting due to the holidays and such. And then the next meeting we'll have after that, if we follow that same pattern, would be January 7th. So what we talked about with Department of Commerce Washington, we can adopt it into the early next year, and we have the time to do that. So what I think would be really useful, and I would like to do, is we can talk about it. We can leave space to talk about it in November 5th meeting, November 19th meeting, December 3rd meeting, and then have that holiday time as well to digest all the information, because it's coming back in future drafts as well. And then look at January 7th or potentially the other January meeting after that to adopt it as a city council, because we do have to make that sort of decision at the end. So that's what I would like to do to give ample time, because there's a lot here to dive into. And I just wanted to vocalize that with our planning commission chair here, as well as the staff and other folks. And then a couple other pieces I had. Really loved the part about section 2 about the downtown. I think that's a lot of really great feedback. I didn't know people felt certain ways about things like walkability and adding more, dining options, a lot of things, a lot of really great elements there. Additionally, the question I had was I was looking at the public involvement process, and there's two things I have here. One, what was the level of engagement we were able to have with renters, if any, in that process? And then two, I guess I would love to see, y'all have been really great about having the public involvement in the process and feedback up to this point. Open house at Risden, you're at every event tabling. I guess I would love to come up with some sort of plan personally, especially with the housing elements, which I think are largely, I've found personally to be confusing to folks. I would love to come up with a plan of not just adoption of this comp plan engagement, but post-adoption engagement as well, especially if we could find a way to, I don't know if the renter communities have been amenable to going to talk to those groups, or just maybe it's a process of folks going to HOA meetings. I'm happy to do that as a council member and talking to some of these folks about these elements. I would love to see that too when we know what is has been passed and continue that public engagement process there. There's a lot of other little elements I like and elements I have, but we have ample time, and I know I can share them with the planning commission and the city staff outside of the council meeting, so I'm going to do that and continue to do that, and you have been warned.
And just a note on that, the post-adoption, we are going to be held to a reporting on our implementation plan. In 2029, we'll have to do a report. So it would be, I will write that down as part of our plan for that. That's a good idea.
Do we have other comment? Oh, city manager, you have something to say?
Yeah, just really quickly to expand on the conversation Councilmember Charbonneau and I had. Really, so my thoughts on that time frame was that'll be, hopefully we've had a couple of robust conversations at the council. So by that time, the planning commission should have kind of handed off the plan to the city council, and now it's the city council's to deliberate on until you're ready to adopt the comprehensive plan. So because of the way the calendar falls, between the first meeting in December and the first meeting in January, we'll have 5 weeks. And so the thought I had was if we're not ready to adopt before then, we have that big long time frame where hopefully come January 7th, we can have digested what we need to digest with the comp plan, and the council can come to that meeting with whatever else they want to see as far as changes to the comp plan. And we can go through it at that meeting, if we need to vote on changes, let's vote on changes, and we can bring back a final document on January 21st. So the thought is that we don't need to have meetings throughout December to try to hash it out. We should take advantage of that break and then come ready with the things we want to see on January 7th, hash that out, and we'll provide a final document on January 21st. Those were my thoughts.
Any thoughts on what the city manager said? Sounds reasonable. Okay, thumbs up, okay. So Director Fitzgibbons, what is the takeaways you need from us tonight here?
Just looking for any feedback that like's been already provided, and we'll keep updating you through the regular updates. Is there anything else, Chair Gatzik, that you'd like to?
We just want to make sure that you have every opportunity to influence this process while it is still more easily moldable. Every time we go through one of these steps, it gets baked a little bit more. Doesn't mean that you can't, take it out and change it, but it gets harder. So we don't want there to be any surprises, so that we can, in real time, make changes that anticipate where your heads are.
Okay, I just have a couple quick comments then. So I kind of echo what Councilmember Tallman said. I'm a little disturbed by the Appendix A, the racially disparate impacts displacement. This whole thing goes through, like you said, and at the end, the conclusion is, and the authors almost seem disappointed that they didn't find racial discrimination in Newcastle. And I get it, maybe in the area over time, there's been problems, but not in Newcastle. So on the front page, if this stuff has to be in there, and I don't agree that it should, it's our comp plan. We can tell King County to pack sand is what I think, but if it's got to be in there, the first sentence should be that Newcastle, has not had, since its inception in 1994, a history of racial discrimination. And that's bore out by the statistics and the comments throughout. In fact, I have the paper version that was handed out, but there's a section in here that says Newcastle ranks high on the Puget Sound Regional Commission for opportunities, meaning there's high opportunity for people to exceed and excel. And that goes right along with the result that there isn't existing in Newcastle, current discrimination, and hasn't been since our inception. So like Councilmember Tallman said, if you're coming here and you want to read the comp plan, not that anybody would ever do that, you might think, oh my gosh, this place is terrible, right? Why would I come here? They got all this horrible history, but it's not clear that this should be separate from the city itself, right? It's an area, county, but that's not Newcastle. And this is Newcastle's comp plan, so I'm a little concerned about that. And this appendix is kind of contradictory, right? It says Newcastle is a high opportunity for people to excel, and then a few pages later, it says the city has a downtown plan which envisions new multifamily mixed-use area. If these areas were to be redeveloped, or if nearby properties were redeveloped, rents could increase, causing displacement. So it essentially says your downtown plan is horrible because it's going to cause people to get kicked out of the area. So and then right after it says this is a great place to live. So this whole, if you read it, it's contradictory in a number of places. And if it has to stay in there, which I would vote against, but it needs to be, some of these contradictions should be cleaned up because it contradicts itself, and the end result should be at the front. Like, hey, this is a study we had to do because we were told to do it, but Newcastle, rest assured, has not had this history from our inception. That's my opinion. I'd probably be outvoted, but that's what I would like to see. And looking at some of the Chapter 3 elements in the housing section, and I'm just going to focus on housing tonight, but excuse me. So on one of the pages, there's a graph that shows, inflation basically, right? That's not Newcastle's fault, right? So it looks like we are trying to overcome and make compensation for decisions made outside our city, which, I'll careful what I say, city manager. So or city attorney. But basically, that's not Newcastle's issue, right, that inflation. So we are not, we're struggling to figure out how to accommodate that. And there's one way to accomplish or to solve that inflation. I won't say it. Anyway, that's frustrating. That's more of a frustration than a comment. Back in the housing goals and policies, there's a lot of use of the word should and shall. And frankly, I think it should all be should. There shouldn't be any shalls anywhere, because this is just a guideline. So, but specifically, this one I wasn't, maybe you can answer this one. P13 under the policies, it says the city shall provide financial and technical assistance. Now, I know it says via regional housing partners for affordable housing, but it kind of implies that the city would provide monetary assistance for people trying to secure homes. That's how I kind of take it, and that could be interpreted that way. So that's why I want the word should rather than shall, because we don't want, any implication that the city's going to pay for people's houses. Again, P7, I think the word should be should rather than shall. And P4, the same thing, should rather than shall, because, just opinion, personal opinion. And then skipping further back, P104, the city shall consider social equity in planning and implementation processes. That should be struck out of there. There's pages of stuff in here that says the city should be fair in all kinds of housing types and how they treat people. We're not social justice warriors. Page P177, the city shall ensure infrastructure is developed and maintained equitably to prevent and undo exclusionary impacts on marginalized communities. We've already established from the appendix that Newcastle is not a racial, divisive city, and we're saying in here that we have marginalized. So does that mean Hazelwood? Does that mean Windtree? I mean, that whole thing should be struck out, because it should say the city should ensure adequate infrastructure for development. I mean, we don't need to complicate things or add in things that shouldn't have to be there. That's my 2 cents on the housing element. I'm not going to go into, I've looked at all the other elements, but I won't go through those tonight, because I know you haven't, as a committee, talked about all the other elements, but just those things concern me, and from a personal, from my personal perspective. So, thank you. All right, so we've had enough comments. We have the city manager commented, the planning commissioner chair. So any last second comments? Otherwise, we're going to close this item and move on to our next general business item. Okay. Thank you, Director Fitzgibbons. Thank you, Planning Chair Gadzik, and thank you. Okay, so one final question, Director Fitzgibbons. Will we have, so based on the timeline Councilmember Charbonneau said, will there be, we'll be planning future interactions like this with the council, correct? Right? Probably a number of times.
I think we absolutely could with that timeline. We have a meeting possibly we'd have to talk about it with city manager, but possibly in November, after we've gotten into the public comment period.
And the public comments period starts when?
Hopefully within a few weeks of, before the end of this month would be ideal, but definitely by November 1st.
So you're submitting the housing element on October 4th for the county to review. We can still change it after they review it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to general business item 12.6, standards of conduct. Councilmember Dahlman or Griffin, who's going to start out? Councilmember Griffin, start us out.
Tell if you want to start.
Oh, sure.
I said,
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So this is to talk further about unbecoming conduct at our city council, on the dais and otherwise. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by reading a formal complaint that was drafted by myself and by Councilmember Griffin, and then back up our statements. We wish to file a complaint against Councilmember Paul Charbonneau for his actions and comments to the news media during the days following the June 4th, 2024 council meeting. Paul, in his role as city council member speaking to the news media, speculated to the motives of a majority of his fellow council members, 4 of us, when they had voted on a motion he had made. He stated their reasons for voting as they did, not as a matter of opinion, despite the other members' testimony to the contrary. Charbonneau's statement was this: I want it to be clear to folks, the mayor and the council members who voted against raising the pride flag didn't do it for some procedural reason. They voted against this because they were uncomfortable recognizing and celebrating the LGBTQIA+ community, full stop. His statement to the media speaks as truth to what is only his opinion, a point he failed to mention. He also failed to mention he was not speaking from an official position, giving the possible impression that the city itself favored his opinion and considered it official. His actions and comments are in direct opposition to required standards of conduct as outlined above in Newcastle Municipal Code 2.68.040A. These standards of conduct state that this action is inappropriate behavior and should be addressed in good faith effort. Therefore, I'm going to get back to that in just a second. So these acts were voluntary and committed on a large scale, gaining national attention. It drug our city through unnecessary drama. It is important for the public to hear and understand the codes and Councilmember Charbonneau's that he willingly violated. The following pertains to our Newcastle Municipal Code 2.68040 and is backed up by our city ethics and standards of conduct, Chapter 6, Section 6.01, 6.02, and 6.03 or 6.04, and Washington State RCW 42.23. Newcastle Municipal Code 2.68 Standards of Conduct includes authoritative commands such as shall, required, ensure, and must, which provides clear and legal authorization to act on violations for breach of ethics. Please pay particular attention to these commands and how they shape the laws we took the oath to uphold. Violation of Part A, personal integrity. Officials shall refrain from abusive conduct, threats of official action, personal accusations, or verbal attacks upon the character or motives of other members of council, city staff, or public. Officials shall maintain truthfulness and honesty and not compromise themselves for advancement, honor, or personal gain. Part A goes on to state that it is incumbent upon officials to make a good faith effort to address apparent violations of this code of ethics. That pertains to all of us on the council. Violation of Part B, working for the common good. Recognizing that stewardship for the public interest must be their primary concern, officials will work for the common good of the people of Newcastle and not for any private or personal interest, and they will ensure fair and equal treatment of all persons, claims, and transactions coming before the city council, boards, and commissions. Violation of Part G. When presenting their individual opinions and positions, officials shall explicitly state that they do not represent the body of the city council or the city of Newcastle, nor will they allow the implication that they do. If someone lies to you, it's on them. If we don't seek the truth, it's on us. We sought the truth at the next city council meeting on June 18th by calling Councilmember Charbonneau out for the lie he told to the media. Unfortunately, when confronted with this matter on June 18th, council meeting, Councilmember Charbonneau only replied that he did not call the media, that they contacted him. He gave this unrelated excuse and took zero accountability for his actions against council members, against the oath of office of the state, of the county, and mostly the very citizens that entrusted him by voting him into office. At the beginning of his term, Councilmember Charbonneau took an oath to serve the city of Newcastle impartially, without bias or yield to persuasion. Everything we do in this capacity must be in the best interest of the entire community. So this is about accountability. If we don't hold leaders of our community accountable for their actions, then we leave the door open for increasing irresponsible, divisive, and damaging behaviors resulting in chaos, which was on full display at our town hall meeting last Thursday, September 9th. Unacceptable behaviors are becoming commonplace during council meetings, and council members, other leaders of our city, and by residents outside of this dais. Councilmember Charbonneau's intentional violation of our code of ethics is a betrayal of the council on which he sits, a betrayal of the oath of office he swore to uphold, and most importantly, a betrayal of the citizens of Newcastle. The result has brought further division and profound damage to the morale of our community. In the interest of our community, I call for Councilmember Charbonneau to resign his council position 6 immediately. It would be unfair to the community and a certain significant obstacle if next year he were to pursue another 4-year term on this council.
I think that for the most part, on this situation, most people want to just look the other way. I believe you can't just look the other way. 2.04 Oath of Office, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability, and that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of Washington, and that I will uphold the Newcastle Municipal Code and all other legal enactments of the city of Newcastle. 2.08, the role of a council member. Council members shall take final action by at least a majority vote. So the council acts as one body and speaks as one voice. We haven't had that happening very well because some of the people believe that, by doing that, you're violating my First Amendment rights. I have a right to be a council member, but I have a right to go and say whatever I want to about what I didn't like about the final action that the council took. That's not the way it works, folks. The policies and operating procedures has been available to everyone, and I have for several months now been encouraging people to read it, understand it, and that hasn't been happening. Newly elected council members were enlisted, and the city paid for training so that they would become aware of what was expected of you. I went through this training. I made the same oath of office. We all did. There is no reason why you shouldn't be aware of what you can do and what you can't as a council member. If you do not think you should follow the rules of the council members, then possibly you should think about maybe being a council member is not for you. I don't know. Now, Councilmember Tallman is going to bring a motion to censor Councilmember Charbonneau, and I'm going to second it. And I would hope that the council will vote to uphold the rules of the council of the city and of the state that we have. So, if you don't, I don't know what you can do. I believe that we as council members must follow the rules. And we can't look the other way when somebody steps out of bounds and says, oh, well, that was fun. I did that and I got away with it. There is no getting away with it. Thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead.
Yes, the least surprising person to have a response. Yeah, so hello everyone. So there is, I think several elements here I will happy to speak to. I hope folks are listening online. First and foremost, we look at this complaint and that I did not disclose, the idea that I didn't disclose that this is a matter of my own opinion. So I talked with, I'll just start here. So the reporter that reported this, his name is Paul Rivera. He works for Como 4 News. He had reached out to me. Here is the first line of the email I sent to Paul Rivera in response. I was not able to meet to talk with him because I had work commitments. So he asked if I could send him a response over email, so that is what I did. On Thursday, June 6, 2024 at 5:24 p.m. This is me. Hi, Paul. His name's also Paul. That's confusing. Hi, Paul. Thanks for reaching out. I have been advised by my city manager and city attorney to disclose that all comments are my own and not the views of the council as a whole. Below are some responses to your questions. I think you were just read by Councilmember Tallman and Councilmember Griffin a lot of code verbatim, which they're trying to do. And things I'm saying here are things that I think, okay? Because that's what we're concerned about here, what I think versus what's fact. And these are things that I think. Councilmember Tallman and Councilmember Griffin just read you a lot of code verbatim to try to create some validity to what is a completely bogus political stunt and claim. And I'm going to get into why I believe it is politically bogus, I believe, to try to bring some validity to it. So first and foremost, their claim that I did not disclose this is my opinion. I absolutely did. I empirically did. Do show and tell with this piece of paper is public record. Like, you can look if you don't believe me, go for it. The part of that, those numbers that Councilmember Tallman was citing, 6.04, breach of ethics. One of the first things under that says that the ethics complaint is supposed to be brought no later than the start of the next council meeting. We are a few days shy of being 4 months later. This is not how this process is normally handled. But I'm going to speak to it anyway because I don't care. I don't want to get off on some technicality. I want to tell you why I believe this is absurd and this is a stunt. But just know that. So there's two ways that their basis is fundamentally flawed. The first element of this, where you're looking at that code 2.68.040, says officials are encouraged to comply with the following standards of conduct. And that's something that, again, that's not something I want to dive really deep into, but it's when I'm talking to our city attorney about these matters, when I'm talking to our city manager, and it's not a formal requirement, but you're encouraged to do it, right? It's another element of just legal, there's no binding, there's no, there's this basis of complaint, which is not something that it's clear as day. I told these folks it was my opinion. And there's that. I think I'm going to be very clear. I talked to the city attorney before I talked to any reporters. And I talked to him again before tonight because I think people love to dog whistle me because I'm young and attach this moniker of being irresponsible to me, which I think is bogus. I think anyone that sees the amount of work I put into this role and the amount of work I put into serving the community knows it's bogus. I think the people that are attaching that moniker to me are already folks that don't like me, who are often, a lot of times, folks who show up and might be loud. But yeah, I don't think it's fair because I do my due diligence and I do make sure I don't put the city in legal trouble and I do make sure I am being thorough as I did with this reporter. So furthermore, it is implied that it is my opinion, even if I did not explicitly state it, which I did explicitly state it. When I'm talking with other elected officials at many different levels, they have all knowingly, immediately said, yeah, it's when you're talking to a reporter, it's implied, it's your opinion. So besides having just on the basis of this complaint being flawed in several fundamental ways and just being purely politically motivated, if that's not clear. So the other element you could argue is that because I clearly said it was my own opinion, we're past that. The idea that it's not nice conduct, right? And, nice being supportive of other members of council, again, which is not binding towards being censured in any way. Yeah, let's talk about that, because I personally, I find it rich. Councilmember Tallman started his comments in the June 18th meeting saying that I solely cared about making a motion to raise the profit fact for personal and political gain. if you want to complain about the way that I'm speaking about what I believe my views are, what I believe, other council members do things for, don't tell me that that same standard doesn't apply to you. Mayor Clark talked about being caught up in whether there's a pride flag flying in front of my parents' house or not, which I personally find disturbing that either he is checking outside of my parents' house or someone else is checking outside of my parents' house. And that since there wasn't a pride flag flying in front of my parents' house, I'm not genuine in my own beliefs for supporting the LGBTQ community. So sure, I spoke to what I believe the motives of other folks are. They objectively did it too. That's one example in that meeting. Councilmember Griffin also violated the Open Public Meetings Act explicitly, using his own city email to email the entirety of the rest of City Council, impersonating someone else. And look, my point here is that I have more examples of that. That's just from one meeting of 3 folks that I think are going to vote to try to censure me in a very performative way. I'm not going to file a complaint against any of them because it's a waste of time. This entire process right here is a waste of time. It's a waste of our staff's time. It's a waste of everyone sitting here's time. It's a waste of folks watching at home's time because there's no legs to it. I could file those complaints against those folks, but I'm not going to. I never will unless I believe it's genuinely very, very serious. When you have, and it's funny too, because genuinely, you might not believe me, but like, if any of those folks reached out to me and you asked if did I tell the reporter it was my opinion, I would have told you. I would have shared this with you right away. It doesn't have to be this hard. Like I would have told you. I've gone up to each of these members individually and said, I'm happy to talk with you outside of this. I've offered that of myself. I've offered that of myself many times. I would have been happy to show this to you, and we don't need to have a public spectacle where I have to go and defend myself, and we have to go after each other. And that's not becoming of this body, and that wastes people time and creates political stunts. It's funny to me that ended with a call for me to resign and ended with a call for me to not run for office again. And I think that's super indicative of the fact that it is a political stunt. And I think the folks sitting up here are scared of me in particular, and I think they're grasping at straws for trying to do anything that they can use as an argument against me. Because they're intimidated that folks saw what their opinion was. We talked about dragging the city through unnecessary drama. I replied to people that reached out to me. I didn't say those things. You said those things. You want to talk about accountability? You want to talk about accountability for running for office and talking about taking the politics out of things? Talk about, being straight. Talk about not doing political stunts when it's 4 months later. You didn't even ask me if I told the reporter it was my opinion when it doesn't meet any of these standards, right? If you look in your agenda packet, which, I guess it's my agenda packet, it's not for everyone else. There's a reason this is not presented as an agenda bill where there's, like the other items above it, where there's recommended action, where there's specific courses of things you can do and things you can take. Because this doesn't have the legs. And this, I personally believe that the staff knew this didn't have the legs, and other people knew this didn't have the legs, and it's purely a stunt. So thank you for, I would really implore people to look at the actions of folks over the words when they talk about these things. They talk about taking politics out, they talk about all of this, and then purely waste everyone's time on a political stunt. Because I said what I said, I would say it again. I disclose and make sure I'm being even though I'm being true to myself and saying those things, I'm not putting the city in jeopardy. And it's just sad to me. And I think it's interesting too, right, for folks that don't know what they're about to move to try to vote for me, is it's a move to censure me. So what, another reason I very strongly believe this is a political stunt, because they're scared of me, they're scared of me running for re-election, because censoring doesn't really do anything to me other than it just being publicly listed in the minutes for people to see. So I think they're doing it so they can explicitly have something to point to. Times from now, if I run for re-election, they want to have something to point to, because I believe it's because they know they look bad. And I think it's very sad, and I think this is all very much a waste of everyone's time. And just because someone reads lines at you verbatim of code, that doesn't mean there's any validity to it. There's no validity to it. This is bogus. I'm gonna keep being myself. I'm not gonna put the city in jeopardy, and I'm gonna do my due diligence and meet with folks and know that I'm not putting the city in jeopardy. But if you can't, seeing how absurd this is, and I'm sure they're about to speak and hand wave everything I'm saying, but when they're saying the same things and speculating to the motives of other council members, when it's clearly I'm stating it's my own opinion, when it's months and months later, when it's supposed to be filed the next week, I'm sorry to everyone for wasting your time tonight with this. I'm not sorry because I didn't file the complaint against myself, but I do have to defend myself, and this is complete bogus and a political stunt, and I can't say it enough and I can't make it clear enough. And I know I repeated myself a lot, but there are folks that don't understand how these government processes work, and there are folks listening online that might not be able to hear everything or catch everything. So this is, I can't help but just shrug and move on from this, quite honestly. Thank you.
Okay, additional comments? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I will keep it short because it's totally a waste of time. Totally agree with Councilmember Charbonneau. Something that was done in June, we are bringing this in October. I think even in June, Councilmember had acknowledged that this was his personal opinion. I mean, we are all professionals here. These are not the things that we should be discussing. We already have serious business at hand. It's budget time. We should be focusing on the budget. We should be focusing on the planning commission. Those things are more important to the city. Bringing this 4 months later, what does it say? Some act of vengeance? It doesn't reflect well in the council. We are a team here, Let's work as a team. Let's move past these things and just put our brains together on things that is going to benefit our citizens. So I'm totally not going to support this motion.
Councilmember Tom, go ahead.
So I would ask, what is the statute of limitations on truth? What is the statute of limitations on integrity? Okay, so this is October, that was June. Upholding your oath of office is not a stunt, and it's not political. So this is black and white, folks. This is about the truth. The fact is, we just heard, 8 minutes of comment from Councilmember Charbonneau. Not once did he address the lie that he told to media, which is why we're bringing this charge. I want to be clear, folks. The mayor and the council members who voted against raising the flag didn't do it for some procedural reason. They voted against this because they were uncomfortable recognizing and celebrating LGBTQIA and community, full stop. That is a lie, okay? We didn't address that, and he's not going to address it because he can't. He created that lie and he told it. We have to hold people accountable for this kind of activity. And we have rules and we have statutes that I read you, and we have to follow them or we're gonna have chaos. And if we let this fly, we're gonna continue to have chaos, and this type of behavior is going to continue to grow. So I would like to make a motion.
I have a comment. So earlier this year, we talked about, as a group, and it was a discussion item about what you could say, specifically was addressing a newsletter that Councilmember Sherlock had, and, about, make it clear, very clear that you're talking for yourself. And we hashed that all out. We all agreed. I don't think there was any dissent. We all agreed that that would be very clear. And she's continued to write newsletters, and she's made that disclosure, and that's fine with it. That's her right to do that. When you may have emails that you exchanged with a reporter. I don't see your emails. I don't know. Maybe it's copyright there. But we're talking about a TV broadcast. That's not an email. So you are on TV saying those things. And there was no doubt about what you were saying, and it wasn't, you didn't say, oh, by the way, reporter man, I'm speaking for myself. So I hope this is the very last time we have to discuss this kind of stuff. You know, I understand Councilmember Tallman and Councilmember Griffin's frustration, but I also understand that we have better things to do, right? So I feel like this should be, and it needs to be, the very last time. There should be no doubt about anybody up here about what you say, this is my opinion, right? We've talked about it, should be clear, right? And if, then call each other up, hold each other accountable, like Councilmember Charbonneau said, call, email, knock on your door, conk yourselves in the head, whatever, right? Having said that, this case, this particular case, or this particular instance was very clear, and it was a TV interview saying those things with no disclaimer on the end. That's disappointing, after we had already talked about it as a council. The section in the manual that says encouraged, I'm disappointed to hear that encouraged, your council member and a public official, encouraged, in your mind, should mean shall. It means it to me, but I guess some people think encourage is optional, but I would hate to think that any of us up here think that that's optional. So after we're done with this discussion tonight, I don't want to have another one of these, and I won't swear, discussions again, right? We have to serve the public, and we have to serve them despite our vast differences on opinions and ideas and policies. So that is obvious to the public, but we have been so far civil. Now we get past this tonight, let's not do this again, right? I don't want to hear this again from this council, from anybody. Work it out in private, and then control yourselves when you're talking to media. You get frustrated because maybe a vote didn't go your way, and you're mad at the other guy or the other woman or whatever. Use some self-control, you know, and just move on and say, this is my opinion, or don't say anything at all. So if my frustration is obvious that it's there, right? So do we have a motion then, Councilmember Tallman?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I move that Councilmember Charbonneau be censured for his deliberate actions and that the result be recorded in council meeting minutes.
We have that.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Councilmember Charbonneau be censured for his deliberate actions and that the result be recorded in the council meeting minutes. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No.
Motion fails as a tie. Next item, additional public comment.
I know you might not want me to comment, but I have to,
Well, we're done. with
I have to objectively correct something that was wrong, that was
We're
you stated.
moving on from that item.
It was not a TV interview, it was a email to the reporter, and it is a quote pulled from online. I did not do a
We're,
TV interview like the mayor was
We're
stating.
moving on, Councilmember Charbonneau, thank you.
Sure, got it.
Okay, second public comment. Same rules as apply as earlier. If you're signed up for public comment, come to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to state whatever you'd like to say. And then when the, please state your name and neighborhood. And then when the buzzer sounds, please conclude your comments. So Jennifer McAller, come on up.
Hey there, my name is Jennifer McAleer. I live in Johnny Creek. So I wanted to start tonight with the definition of hypocrisy. It's defined as the practice of claiming to have moral standards or beliefs to which one's own behavior does not conform. The retaliatory nature of the motion calling for Council Member Paul Charbonneau's censure or resignation is a textbook example of hypocrisy that guides the conduct of Mayor Clark, Councilmember Steve Tallman, and Councilmember Tom Griffin. To say that Councilmember Charbonneau acted in violation of Newcastle Municipal Code for speaking briefly to the media, but not to mention the ongoing violations of several other council members, again, the exact definition of hypocrisy. You take issue with Councilmember Charbonneau stating that those who voted against raising the flag didn't do so for some procedural reason. Is that not a fact? Those many hours back here in this room in June, where we had to listen to Eden Church members, most of whom aren't even Newcastle residents, go on and on about how gay people are pedophiles and have mental illnesses after singing hours of church music in a government building? Where was the focus on procedure that night? Let's be honest, in every way imaginable, that night was about your intolerance for gay people in the community and clearly had nothing to do with the flag, procedures, or proclamations. Back in June, Mayor Clark stated that one of his many excuses about being against raising the pride flag was that he's against proclamations. Yet at the September 3rd meeting, a proclamation was unanimously passed. For the record, I stand with the Hindu community tonight, and I think those who voted against the proclamation should be ashamed. Councilmember Charbonneau has said nothing to the media that was untrue, unkind, or unhinged. Meanwhile, can we say the same for every council member here? No. The complaint filed against Councilmember Charbonneau references the oath that he took, including upholding the United States Constitution. I'm wondering if this is the same Constitution that Mayor Clark denies there being a separation of church and state within. Is this city council member suddenly U.S. Constitution experts? Why is it morally imperative for Councilmember Charbonneau to uphold the Constitution but not the mayor? Quite frankly, there's more than enough evidence to file complaints against several people up here, but as Councilmember Charbonneau just stated, that would be a waste of everybody's time. Did the mayor state it was his opinion when he spewed hatred back in June when he talked about the LGBTQ community and the victims that we are? Did he state it was his opinion when he talked about Black people and getting over slavery? I didn't hear it. Did anyone in this room hear that? I didn't hear it. It was his opinion. It sounded pretty official that night. So the mayor himself hasn't spoken to the media, I guess. Or did he actually speak to journalist Jonathan Cho, who we all know exactly what he believes in? And did in that interview, was it made clear that it was your personal opinion? I don't think so. Councilmember Tallman, you are a character witness for an accused murderer and a former Newcastle Safety Commissioner, Aaron Brown Myers, who shot and killed an unarmed 17-year-old Hazrat Ali Rohani. Should we really be taking ethics advice from you? The community deserves more than the double standards, hypocrisy, and total lack of ethics displayed by half of you up there tonight. We deserve better representation. You should all look in the mirror and ask yourself if you can do better, because you can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our public comment for tonight, the second public comment. Moving on to the planning calendar. Go ahead, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The main items that we have for October 15th will be our budget, our next budget study session. Again, we'll provide an update on the general fund. That night, we'll start with the swim fund that we didn't get to tonight, and then we'll get into the rest of the city's funds, which should be a bit more brief than we were tonight, just based on what's in them. The other main item will be our state lobbyist, Shelley Helder, will be here for a pre-legislative presentation, and we'll kind of kick off our legislative priorities discussion with that. We also have several consent items for public works contracts that'll be on that agenda as well. Happy to take any questions on planning calendar.
Questions for the City Manager? Okay, seeing no questions, that concludes our meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you.